Welcome in, friends. It's June the 3rd, 2026, and I'm your host tonight on The Hang Up. Not Matt D, but Justin. Glad to be here with my friend Ian. How you doing, Ian?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled. I'm excited. It's been a minute since you and I got to host a stream together, other than our triplet with Unapologetic.
Yeah. I don't know. It's always great to debate with you. I think that we have very different interest areas, so we complement each other pretty well, I think.
It helps too, because sometimes we get what I might term philosobabble happening from a guest, and my eyes start to roll back in my head to where I can see like my brainstem, and you actually enjoy the philosophy, which is super helpful. And yeah, you're good enough that we can learn while you're doing the philosophy dialogue. You're not like just trying to petty fog and use big words that people understand. So I think we all appreciate that.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I'm very passionate about is making my point clear and known. One of my biggest pet peeves in argumentation is people think like finding innovative ways to avoid having the debate is itself like a form of debate, and I think that that's honestly just pretty pathetic. I have nothing but scorn for people who can't explain their position clearly. But I mean, I also feel like the same way with respect to like prophecies. When prophecies come up, it's one of the things that I appreciate so much about you is that whenever somebody brings up like a prophecy or something like that, that I can always rely on you to know exactly what's going on and exactly why it didn't get fulfilled, or it's not a prophecy or something of that sort. Because whenever somebody brings up some like niche specific verse to me, it's like, oh, I'm pulling up like Bible Hub to see what's going on.
Yeah. I totally get that. So anyways, we're going to wait for some guests to load up. We're looking for someone to tell us, hey, is there a God we should believe in? What about the Christian God? What about the Islamic God? Listen, any God concept we're be interested in dialoguing about. And believe it or not, both of us used to be on the other side. Ian and I both used to be believers, and now we're not. So we're obviously open to new information. If there was really good information, I mean, like the right kind, I would definitely reconsider the God hypothesis. And but I'm curious. People ask us all the time, like, "Hey, what would it take to convince you?" And I feel like I know exactly what it takes to convince me, even though Christians will say that I would never be convinced. What do you think would convince you?
Yeah, I think that there's like kind of two broad categories. I think that you could either give like an evidential argument, which is like you raise the probability of God existing or Christianity being true to above 50%. If you cross that 50% mark, then I'm a believer for sure. And then the alternative is that you could give like some sort of like deductive like syllogism, like premise one, premise two, therefore God exists. If I agree with all of the premises and the premises necessitate the conclusion with an inference rule, if it follows the laws of logic and the conclusion just follows from the argument, that does it too, right? I think either way, I think there are interesting arguments to consider on like both like the deductive arguments, but also on like the evidential arguments. I also think like like a good example of like an evidentiary argument, one that's like really trivial for most atheists. If Jesus appeared right here in my room, instantly the probability that Christianity is true, it's just like shot through the roof. Like that,
Sure.
that is crazy unlikely under atheism, but would be really expected under Christianity.
True. Yeah. If Christianity were true, we would expect. In fact, in the Bible, it happens many times where God appears to people. In fact, in Genesis 18, he shows up to Abraham and eats with him, like eats a meal with this guy. So it seems like he could do it if he really wanted to.
Yeah, I bet he could be here
Nevertheless,
wrestling with you naked right now.
I mean, they did do some wrestling at the Jabbok River in Genesis with Jacob, but that's a really interesting trope. I did have a syllogism, or not syllogism. I'm curious if you have some sort of argument for something I've been curious about, because I've asked a lot of like believers, if God was evil, could you know it? And obviously the answer is no. They just implicitly believe that God is good. But Is there an argument for from philosophy why we would expect God to be good, or would he be allowed to be evil?
So, here's something that I think is convincing, and this kind of ties back to views that I hold related to metaethics. But I think that if something is good, if something is like truly like the good thing to do, then it's going to follow like a specific structure with respect to things like the reasons that you have to do an action. I think that something being good means that there's a reason that every single person, no matter who you are, no matter what your goals are, has to do. Everyone has a reason to do this. So you determine what the good thing is by determining the shared things that we all have reason to do. So maybe what you want to say is that if God is all knowing, then he knows exactly what reasons he has to take specific actions. He knows exactly what the things are that everyone has reason to do. And then from that, you'd probably need to say that he's perfectly rational too. But if God is perfectly rational and he knows all of the reasons that he has to do whatever he has to do, then from that it might follow. I think it's plausible to say after that, at that point, that it follows that God would be all good, that he would just always act on, he knows what the moral reasons are that exist. He's
Mm.
perfectly rational, so he's going to do the thing that's most in line with reasons. And then he just acts accordingly. That to me seems like the most plausible story.
Hmm. It is interesting. I'm curious if hmm. So if God does exist,
Yeah.
it seems to me that we if he sets the rules or she sets the rules, then if this is real, like God really does exist, it might be difficult to understand what the difference between good and evil are, right? If they get to set the rules, right?
Yeah. I think that that touches on something that I think is completely incoherent, which is something like divine command theory. I to this day have genuinely no clue what what possible way there could be, or like what possible connection there could be between me having like some reason to take specific actions and God giving a command. I just don't know why God saying something is intrinsically reasons giving to me. And of course, like something that was mentioned earlier, whatever the good thing is, whatever the morally obligatory thing is, whatever our moral obligations are, we have reasons to do them. So if there is no reason that I have to do what God tells me to do, that just can't be the good thing. There's some more plausible models of God's relation to goodness. Like, for example, maybe the moral facts exist and they have just nothing to do with God. And then God just like tells you what they are. Maybe
Sure.
he like conveys them to you. But at
If
that
they're truly
point, like,
objective, then you're saying,
yeah, well, yeah, at that point, it's just
Mhm.
independent of God. Like, God could
Right?
not
Yeah,
exist and they would still be objective. Like, God
that
kind of
makes
has no
sense.
bearing on it. And that's
Okay.
what the Euthyphro dilemma is like getting at its heart is like, okay, the
Hmm.
reasons that we have to do the things that are good, let's say God commands something, and if he commands something, then that's a good thing. That is to say, like we have a reason to do it. But does does the reason that we have to do what God says come simply from the fact that he said it? Because if that's the case, then it's arbitrary. God could have said
Right.
anything. But
Exactly.
otherwise, it comes from something that has nothing to do with God saying so.
Mhm.
So it would exist the same regardless of whether or not God exists. I think that's kind of the core issue with the Euthyphro dilemma. And when people say like God just is goodness itself, I think I don't even know what that means, frankly.
Yeah, these are weird things because goodness is typically describing the property of a behavior or a
Yeah.
thought. It's an evaluation of some nature. But to say that God is goodness, it's weird. It's like saying uh, water is something other than water. Like we say, water
Like
is static.
hydrationness or something.
Right. If someone yeah, water is hydration. Yeah, it's a weird. You're like blurring the categories together. It's not. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Um, but friends, we're looking for someone to call in and tell us, hey, we might think the Bible's a little bit of bullshit. And of course, obviously, I think the Quran is on the same level as the Bible. It's hard to tell. It's neck and neck sometimes to figure out which one is the most nonsense. But if you think the Bible is God's word, we'd love to hear from you. We'll even read it in the King James if you need us to. And, we could do the ESV or the NRSV, which reminds me, Ian, you are working through one of the NRSV Bibles right now. What's been hitting you when you've been reading?
So, okay, I'm kind of like the most obvious thing. This is like the part that I just can't get over. Is that it just feels so obviously written by somebody who had the ethics of the time, and that's also consistent with the fact that the ethics are evolving throughout the course of the Bible. That's exactly what we would expect if these ethics are just the people at the time telling mythology back and forth, and then they change over time. Like as the ethics of the society changes, so too do the ethics of the Bible, which, it explains both why the ethics change, but also why it's so horrific. Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy that they just think that it's like it commits you to the least plausible versions of, or like the least plausible models of like goodness or justice. Like, you're forced to say just unbelievable things like, sometimes infants deserve the death penalty as a
Yeah.
punishment for their entire people group. Like, what?
Hmm.
I
It's
don't even
rough.
know what to make of that, frankly.
I would say the hard slavery is one of the hard things to stomach in the Bible, but there's so many other things. Like God approves of blood feuds. He approves of subjugating women. He doesn't think that women should have autonomy over their own body or reproduction. It just man, I often wonder how it is that somebody who who isn't a man could read the Bible and think that it's good for them when God continuously degrades everybody that's not a man from Israel. Wild.
Yeah, I think that at that point, like, you really hear like the copes start to come out when, when somebody who isn't a man gets confronted. For example, like, I've had like women on my stream, and I've asked them about this, and typically it gets awkward. They don't have a good explanation. It's a clear point of cognitive dissonance for them. And I think the worst examples, or the things that I feel the most like upset about, is when people just bite the bullet and say, yeah, I am like lesser, or I am like meant to be like subjugated. I think that's like really sad.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's hard because when I was, and you've heard my story, when I was a Christian, I was reading through these texts, and every time something that was troubling came up, I said, "Oh, this is troubling." I never made excuses for it. I'm curious. I'd love to see a psychological study on cognitive dissonance, like what causes people to reach back and say, "No, no, no, I have to find a way to justify this thing," rather than just saying, "Actually, this is monstrous."
It's really interesting you say that, because I actually know how the term cognitive dissonance came about. Like, I know the originating study. So okay. Also keep in mind, this all happened in like I think like the 1960s, 1970s, where they were doing like there were much fewer like scientific standards back then. But basically, what was going on is there was so the premise is this: you have a group of UFO cultists, one of the very first ones called the Seekers. They're a group of people, and they're claiming that the end is near. They live in like some small community, and they've spread far and wide. I think they put ads in the newspaper saying the end is near. Like aliens are going to come to the planet. They're going to wipe everything out. Like, you need to, I don't know. I think it's like maybe like join the Seekers or do something like that. It's all ending. Give away your stuff. So a group of scientists basically infiltrated the Seekers. The idea that they were interested in is what's going to happen when nothing comes. Like, how are they going to cope with that fact that nothing showed up? Because a unique thing about the Seekers is that they gave a specific date. That's the bad thing, that, if you want your conspiracy
Mm,
theory to survive for a long time, you should never do. You should never give a specific date for when the big event is going to happen. You saw this with QAnon too, because that's a day that is going to come and nothing is going to happen. So the big date comes, of course, nothing happens.
right.
And there are two really interesting reactions. The people who had committed to this, like kind of like half-heartedly, who committed to it, kind of last minute, who didn't commit very much to it, those people were like, oh shit, I guess we're wrong. And then they changed their mind. The people who were hardcore, die-hard seekers, the people who, they gave away all their stuff. They completely uprooted their life for this. They quit their jobs. They did all of that. These are the people where it's the fact that they sunk so much into it. That fact causes them to believe even harder. The fact that the UFOs didn't come to these people was a sign that all of their faith did mean something, that they took it as like a sign that they were so faithful that the aliens didn't destroy the planet. And that's the story. They tried to use it for recruitment. They tried to recruit new people by
That's
pointing to the
wild.
event that didn't happen. So I guess like to bring it a bit like roundabout, I think the thing that causes cognitive dissonance is sunk cost. I think that if you've sunk a lot of your life into something, if your entire social structure is built on this, if you've thrown away everything for this, you're so much more likely to just double, triple, quadruple down, whatever it takes to avoid digging yourself out of the catastrophic hole that you've dug yourself into.
It reminds me of an interesting call. We have one caller in queue, an atheist. We're gonna wait for the queue to populate just a little bit. We were doing debates here. If you are a believer, we want to talk to you first. If you're not a believer, we'll definitely still take your call. But we always prioritize the believers so that we can have some robust conversation. But this does remind me of the Lord Our Righteousness Church, also used to be called Strong City. It was a breakoff of the Seventh-day Adventists. And they were like the early Jehovah Witnesses, where they had a specific date for like the rapture, the end times, the whole thing, right? And the BBC was following this group. It must have been 15 or 20 years ago now. And the leader was out of his mind. He ended up getting arrested for touching little girls. It was the whole thing. But anyways, the people that still followed him, still believed in him, they have a huge compound out in the wilderness of the western part of the U.S. And the guy from the BBC got kicked out. He couldn't finish all the documentary, so he didn't get to film necessarily from inside the day that Jesus is returning. So he drove back to like the fence of the compound and just filmed everywhere he could. And then on the day, they're like literally marching around the compound, like going around Jericho, just doing horns and cymbals and the whole thing. And then nothing happened. And almost immediately, people started saying that, oh, well, it happened spiritually. It happened in the air. And it's like, oh, no. So it's a lot of cope. Bad.
Yeah, it's a common theme. But you telling me that story reminded me of like another common theme. I think that there are some like pretty decent lessons in the Bible, actually. I think one of the lessons that I think is the most true is that you will know them by their fruits. I think that that's a great lesson, and I think that that's like a real source of value. Which is interestingly enough, I think that this is one thing that's true of people like Muhammad, true of people like Joseph Smith, true of people like the ones that or like the one that you just named, where it's like something about them, they get revelation from God, and suddenly like they simply need to fuck your wife. There's no other way. God said so. He just needs to touch little girls. Like he can't not. It's you want to disobey God. I don't know. I think that there's something interesting about the fact that Jesus didn't do that. When compared to somebody like Muhammad, who's like, listen, I just need to marry your wife, I need to marry your wife.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Well, let's take our first caller, Jacob, calling all the way from PA. Has a question about the Hebrew temples. This should be an interesting conversation. Get him loaded up. Jacob, welcome in. You're talking to Justin Nian on the Hang Up. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Can't complain. Yeah, what's the question, bud?
Yeah, I had a random thought the other day. The ancient Hebrew temple, there was like the holy place, which was like the common meeting area, correct? And then there was the Holy of Holies that the Levitical priest, like one Levitical priest, could go into once a year for the sacrifice.
Yeah.
So didn't that temple get destroyed? And
more
wasn't
than
the
once,
penalty
actually.
of going into the Holy of Holies the penalty of death if you weren't that one Levitical priest?
Kind of. So it wasn't an automatic death. There wasn't like one specific priest that had to do it. They actually typically had a rotation. In fact, that's how Aaron's two sons died, Nadab and Abihu. They went into the Holy of Holies intoxicated and gave what was unauthorized fire, incense burning, and fire broke out and killed them. So you can go in there to do certain things, but for the Day of Atonement, that's just once a year. That's Leviticus 16. It's just once a year, and but yeah, if it was going to be the Day of Atonement, typically it's going to be the high priest.
Okay. Now, my question would be, would it be impossible to destroy the temple without actually going in there? Like, I don't honestly believe that God would strike anybody down for being in that specific space. But if that was essentially like the punishment for violating God's decree of this is a holy place, I don't see how you could destroy the temple without intruding on that space.
Yeah, so that's
unless I misunderstand it.
Kind of. So typically, when there's two things that happen when people went into the temples. Typically, they would start burning it from the outside. They would try to destroy it. In fact, we read about that in Maccabees. They typically like burn the whole city down if they can, and then they usually want to go in and steal the vessels and the treasury, which is we read that a couple times on the Mesha stele from the 9th century. The Moabite king King Mesha records that he literally went in and stole the vessels of Yahweh. When the Babylonians came in, they literally stole the vessels of Yahweh and took them to Babylon, and then we hear about them coming back after the exile. So typically that's what they were after, and you can destroy that without actually going into the Holy of Holies. But that being said, a lot of times God wasn't there. So prior to the Babylonians coming in and taking it all down, God left. That's what Ezekiel is talking about. God leaves the temple and moves to the east. He moves to where they're going to end up. So he's not even there by the time the Babylonians get there. So the reality is, it's not just going into the Holy of Holies that will kill you. It's being in the presence of the Holy God, and you're doing something completely unauthorized. Then you're going to get zapped.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of things clearer for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult situation because people would think like, hey, is the Holy of Holies magical? It's actually not magical. In the ancient world, the gods could inhabit either a room or a standing stone, like an idol. Even on the ancient ziggurats, they had a room at the top of them. A lot of people don't know the construction style of these ziggurats, but there's a room at the top of it, and they're trying to construct like a sacred mountain because they believe that gods lived in the sky and would come down to earth using the mountains because the mountains touch the sky. And so they would put a room on the top of these giant ziggurats, and they'd have food up there every day for the god, so they can come down. They'd have a bed for them to rest on, usually a basin to wash up with, and then usually like libation offerings and things like that. So, but the thing of it was that room had to be perfectly clean. There was a priest in charge of keeping that room clean because God would be completely turned off by entering a dirty room. That's kind of the place with the Holy of Holies. It has to be perfect, or else God's presence isn't going to be there. And if God's presence is there and things are wrong, well, the fire of God will break out.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Very cool.
Yeah, but it's a good question, though.
Ian, I'm sorry you couldn't be more involved.
That's okay. I forgive you. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Thank you.
But you do have to do penance.
Yeah. Make sure your room is clean when you're doing the penance.
Sure.
That's ironically what I'm doing right now. So
good. Yeah. That's perfect for the blood sacrifice that I demand.
John, I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too, Jacob. Take care, friend.
Bye-bye.
A lot of people don't realize that the temple setup with God also was handling like the feeding of God. In Exodus, when you get towards the end of the book, there's actually a daily feeding schedule. People don't realize that they literally believe that God was eating the offerings.
He hungers. Yeah, he yearns
Yeah.
for the food.
It's true. And in Leviticus, a couple times, God refers to his offering as my food, which is pretty wild.
Okay, yeah, that is very funny. I mean, that's another thing that's so striking about the Bible is that God of the Old Testament really is just some guy. He's just a
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah. The angels as well. So if you go to Psalms, let's see, Psalm 73 maybe, Psalm 78, we learn that you remember the story about the manna in heaven, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people wonder, like, what's going on with the manna? Where does it come from? Why does it exist? Well, it turns out that when it fell from heaven, what was falling was the stuff that the angels would eat. So it says in Psalm 78 that they tested God, demanding food, and then it says that He gave them the grain of heaven. Mortals ate the bread of angels. He sent them food in abundance from the heavens. So that's they literally think in the ancient times that God ate and drank. That's what they believed.
Yeah, he fed them the angel pellets.
Yeah, they're on a very strict diet.
Yeah. Little crunchy brown like angel treats.
Yeah. Well, friends, if you want to call in, the number is 720-619-2282, or you can use the web link. The web link is in the description of the video. We'd certainly love to talk to you. If you have an argument from God, we're going to be down for that. If you've got a philosophical argument, we'd definitely love to hear it. Hey, even if you've got an argument, I don't know, for a prime mover of some nature, hey, we're more than happy to hear it. If you are an agnostic or a non-believer, we'll take your calls too if you have questions, especially if you have a question about philosophy for Ian. I really enjoy watching Ian answer some of these philosophy questions because when I hear them, I'm like, I don't even know where to start. So if you want to call in and ask questions, that's perfectly fine too, but we're going to be prioritizing the theists. But Ian, what are you reading right now? And for people that are kind of new to philosophy, how would you recommend getting into it?
That's a great question. There's one book that I always recommend. I strongly recommend Michael Huemer's Knowledge, Reality, and Value. I think Michael Huemer is wrong about basically everything, but I think that he's an extremely clear explainer. Like I think that he lays out the landscape in a way that's, fair enough, and he lays it out very clearly. It's an introductory philosophy book. It goes over like a lot of the most important issues in contemporary philosophy. I just highly recommend it. One thing that I'm reading up about right now, I'm reading up about there's this argument that I thought of. It might be a bit too technical, but I think the first way, like the argument from motion, might be self-defeating, or it should probably be better understood as like an argument from change. So it's trying to reason to the existence of like an unchanged changer. But I mean, think about the nature of like an unchanged changer. Whatever this unchanged changer is doing, it must be always doing. Like it can't go from not doing it and then like start doing it. So
Because it's outside of time, right?
well, yeah, well, that's true. That follows from the fact that it's unchanging. God is outside of time, or he's considered outside of time if there isn't like successive moments in his life. That's basically the criteria that people use for assessing whether he's timeless, is whether there's like a single moment in his life or whether it's like multiple successive moments. But so the argument for why it's self-defeating goes like this. The unchanged changer must just be eternally changing. He must just be eternally causing the first change. But if you have a first change, well, it doesn't really make sense to say that this is temporal unless the B theory of time is true, unless eternalism is true. Otherwise, you run into like kind of like a nonsense statement where you do have like a moment in time, but it's like infinitely far into the past, and that can't be.
What does that even mean?
I don't even know what to make of that. It's like a nonsense claim. The only way that I think can be made sense of this is by saying like God is just like eternally actualizing, like God is just like eternally causing the first change, and then the timeline just exists eternally. The B theory of time, the eternalist view of time. But then the eternalist view of time is incompatible with the argument from change. because the argument from change relies on like a very specific idea about what change is. It says that change is the actualization of a potential, that things have potentials, and then through the actualization of them, that's how a change comes about. But that's just not compatible with the eternalist view of the universe, because all of these successive moments are actual. There aren't potential moments. There are only actual moments. There aren't potential changes. All of the changes that happen are actual in like the view of time where the past, present, and future all exist. So I guess like to bring it full circle, the argument that I'm thinking of is that the argument from change leads to if you have an unchanged changer, you're going to have the B theory of time because he must just be eternally causing that first change. And if you have the B theory of time, then that's incompatible with the notion of change that the argument needs to get started in the first place, which means that the argument is self-defeating.
That's really good. And you were saying something that was really interesting, because you're like, if there was like a first moment, right? The question is, how are we classifying what happened, I guess we would say, prior to the first moment? I don't know how we could not invoke time there. And if somebody did something in the infinite past without time, then it seems like a category error, because like that there's not like an end of infinity. Like there's no starting point or end point of an infinite future or past. So it seems like a category error, like trying to say there's a starting point on something that doesn't have a starting point.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's I don't know, that's like really obvious to me, and I'm like looking for ways to like formalize this what feels like pretty obvious. That yeah, if the argument relies on like a single moment infinitely far into the past, well, we have a problem, because you just can't have that. If you have two moments, okay, right now is a moment, that's obvious. But if for any moment, any two moments, that is, there's just going to be a finite distance between them. You can't have one moment infinity and then another moment. That's nonsense. You can always find the distance between them by taking their position and like subtracting one from the other. And then that just gives you like the distance. That's literally like the formula for the distance between these two moments. So it just can't be. You're absolutely right with that. Which is why I think that the only model that is maybe even like semi-viable with the God that's eternally creating is the B theory of time. But then that has like a lot of strangeness to it. One thing that's interesting is that it's argued that it like worsens the problem of evil, because if the entire timeline just eternally exists, God actually never defeats evil. Evil's kind of just always there at like the specific time slices.
Yeah. So it's interesting, because if somebody says that God did or thought or had anything in the infinite past, it seems like they're describing something that would never be actualized. So you can't say that God did anything. He would have no potential, right?
Yeah. There isn't like a moment of actualization of this. It would just need to be. I think I'm coming around to the view that probably even the notion of like a timeless action is incoherent, because an action just is an event. Yeah. And you can't have like an event that happened infinitely far into the past, because then there would be a finite distance, but also it's infinite. So it's a contradiction.
That's pretty wild. No, we're still waiting for a brave theist to call up. I know this is maybe a daunting pairing tonight. Matt's not here, so I promise I'll try not to do too much yelling in Matt's absence, because I get to be the bad cop when Matt's not here. When Matt's with me, I'll try to be the good cop. So, but we'll see. I might have to do some MFers. We'll see what happens. I make no apologies, though, if someone might deserve it. But nevertheless, hey, we'd love to hear from you. And let's see. I mean, if we don't get a caller, Ian and I will probably dialogue for a little bit. But also, if it gets really bad, I mean, I'm going to have to start telling you dad jokes. So we're going to have to. We're going to need someone to call in here so we can have some robust discussion. But Ian, I'm curious, are there, when you're reading through the Bible, was there anything that stood out so people read snippets, right? And you started from the beginning and started reading onward, right? The interesting thing about reading it through is you'll start to notice contradictions because you're not just reading a snippet here or a snippet there. Have you found anything interesting where you're like, well, you read this here and then you get over here and like, wait a minute, that can't work because of the thing that he said over here?
Yeah, so I think that there's like a couple of there's like a couple of ways that things can be contradictory. It can be like internally contradictory that like, God says things that are just like obviously incompatible with each other. Or the Bible says things about God that are obviously incompatible with each other. But I think there are also like external contradictions. Like the Bible can contradict like something that we know to be true about reality. I think one of the things, and this is why it's so important, you know this better than anyone, that it's like so important when you think that there's a contradiction to actually go, like, especially if you want to use it in like an argumentative sense, to go back to the Hebrew and then verify that it is like a real contradiction. I think that there are like a number of like pseudo contradictions. I came to you with one of them like a really long time ago, where it was like, okay, God is saying in like I think Leviticus that these bugs have like 4 legs. That's false. I took 7th grade biology class. That's everyone knows bugs have 6 legs, dummy, or something like that. But it turns out you explained to me that that's probably actually not a contradiction because of like the word that gets used there. But there are like some genuine contradictions that have come up. Like for example, the contradiction in between like the golden calf story and then I think it's like Numbers where God both can't change his mind. He's not immortal. That he should lie, or a man that he should change his mind, but he does change his mind, and actually kind of he is immortal in the New Testament. He like kind of both is a man and mortal. Like
so
it's
I've
crazy
talked
how
to
that happens.
a number of rabbis about that, and every time I bring up Jesus, they'll say, God is not a man. He said it. He said God is not a man. But the Christians will have one trick up their sleeve because there's an interesting idiom that shows up in the Hebrew Bible where God says that he is a man of war. Now we would understand this to just be like a person of war, an individual of war, like a saying. He's not necessarily saying he is a man, but nevertheless, that's how people read it. But it's funny because even the word for man doesn't necessitate that it's a human male. Like there's some flexibility there, but yeah, God is not a man. That's strictly like just definitionally the problem here.
Yeah, I have no idea. Okay, I mean, I guess that's they're inclined to weasel out of these contradictions in like a number of ways. I think the one that you've expressed is like a great way to totally weasel out of what is like obviously a contradiction. But one thing that I don't understand is that just seems like a different contradiction, saying that he both is a man of war and also that he isn't a man. I don't know, that seems like a contradiction to me.
Right. Yeah. When you put the Band-Aid on it, you open another wound.
Yeah. That's like a common strategy that they seem to be doing when they try to like reconcile a contradiction, is that they'll point to like a way in which one of the horns of the contradiction is like better supported, and it's like, great, another contradiction. Damn,
Yep.
I guess even in the Old Testament, God both is and isn't a man.
Well,
sure, I guess.
He doesn't have to follow the laws of logic. He invented the laws of logic, so he can be and not be at the same time.
True. Yeah. What a great point. The paper that I've been reading up on, like really recently, I don't know, the argument like seriously might be too complex, but I want to try to get. I think it's like a really good argument. It's like a really interesting argument. But it has to do with like the possibility of. So I think like kind of the thrust of the argument is supposed to be that if God exists, if God is in existence, there needs to be like a structural backdrop that allows for things to obtain in the first place. That when you have like two possibilities, like a thing is actual and a thing is not actual, that requires like some sort of structure that underlies it. But God can't be identical to that structure, because then God would just like be existence. And there's a lot of reasons why theists don't want to say that God just is existence. You're committed to saying like a bunch of wacky things like, yeah, God is the Holocaust. it's just like a really bad bullet to bite. So, but then the alternative is that God just exists within like kind of this like logical space that allows for the differentiation between like what is and what is not. And then God would depend on that in order to have like thoughts about things, or in order to like will a specific thing, as opposed to the thing that he isn't willing. It kind of depends on like some underlying like logical space. It's a bit abstract. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but I don't know. I think it's a good argument. I look forward to like working on it and making it like more approachable.
Definitely one of the arguments where for those of us like with my brain, you'd have to write it on your notepad for us to keep track of it. I think that'd probably be the move to make. We had a theist in queue named Jonathan, but Jonathan's called in and dropped, I think, 2 times. I don't know if Jonathan's connection is good enough to make the call. But Jonathan, get back into queue. We're more than happy to take you up. Jonathan is claiming that Jesus is God, which is pretty lofty claim if you don't even believe in God yet. I think you could establish a God, or you could establish Jesus as God. We'd be able to take either argument, but I think it certainly would be an interesting one. We do have one caller in the screen right now. It looks like it's going to be Steve, so we'll grab Steve whenever Steve's ready. But I have a couple syllogisms, but I've been working on my cheat sheet, and there's one in particular that I've tried out, which it's kind of interesting because you guys know that all sins are forgivable, right? That's like the whole shtick with Jesus's thing. But then Paul says that you have these other sins that will send you to hell. You can't go to heaven if you commit these sins, which, first of all, is a contradiction. But second of all, it creates kind of an interesting problem, because also in the New Testament, it says that all sins are equal. Any sin, you're guilty of breaking them all, which means if any sin is equal to all others, that means they're also equal to the sins that would send you to hell that Paul listed. Which means any sin you commit would technically send you to hell, and it means Jesus doesn't forgive anybody for their sins.
Yeah, that sounds like brutal. Like, I actually don't even know. I think you'd be getting to words don't mean words at like record paces.
Yeah, it would. And that's what you have to do in order to the goal of apologetics is not to read the Bible and figure out what it says. The goal is to read the Bible and then twist the words enough that whatever you're trying to get to, you kind of get close to it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've been thinking about this a lot lately with all the Paul worshippers that come on my stream, but like, it seems like Paul just made everything like much worse. Like, at least like trying to salvage like a reasonable doctrine. It just seems like he's inserted like a ton of contradictions into the Bible, because he doesn't give a fuck what Jesus says, is kind of my impression.
Well, he probably didn't know what Jesus said, which is the biggest problem. He said he was taught directly by Jesus, but he contradicts Jesus at every turn, which is wild. If Paul didn't exist, Christianity would have been a small cult break off of Judaism. It'd be like Judaism 2.0. But because of Paul, it's a completely different religion, because Paul wanted to bring this religion to the Gentiles, and the Gentiles were like, I don't know about all these laws. And so Paul, through the Holy Spirit, had to find a way to get rid of them.
Yeah. Exactly, right. He got like lowballed by the Gentiles, and then he has to go back to Jesus and be like, listen, this is their best offer.
It's like at the pawn shop, he's like, here's what I can offer you.
Yeah, best we can do is like, I don't know, like, best we can do is not get divorced, we're not giving up the foreskin.
True, because that's the topic of the law that comes up the most, is, I don't know about this cutting the tip off. This can't be the thing.
If you were a Gentile, wouldn't that be like your top concern too? You're like, you want me to what?
Yeah, you're kidding me. Oh man, it's terrible.
Yeah.
All right, let's grab Steve. Is an atheist calling from Missouri. Has questions about Mormonism and the Salamander letters, which should be interesting. I'm not sure I know much about the Salamander letters, but we'll see. We'll find out. But Steve, welcome on to the Hang Up with Justin and Ian. How you doing?
Very good. It's great to be on with you guys. You're like
Mhm.
the Gary and Ruth of my favorite hosts. And
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I was just, yeah. Unfortunately, fortunately, I'm an atheist, but I hope this is a little interesting. I remember in my philosophy class way back in college, Saint Anselm's Proof of God. Have you ever heard that one?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's short. I
That's the
kind of
ontological
remember it.
argument. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That I guess like just an overview for the audience in case the audience is unfamiliar. The argument is something like this, picture the best being that you could possibly picture. You know, this being, it would be better if it had, I don't know, like the property of existence, maybe you want to say, or it would be better if it existed rather than not existing. So what you imagined just now, you must imagine it as existing because if you imagined it, but you imagined it as like not existing, well, that would be worse than if it did exist. So it must just actually exist.
yeah, that's the way I understood it. Yeah, but yeah, that just stuck with me. Also, it came to my, I noticed Justin and Ian that there's very few Mormon callers, if any, anymore. And I'm wondering if they've been ordered not to call into shows like this. But I read a book many years ago called The Salamander Letters. Are
Mhm.
you familiar with that?
I'm not. No.
It's a true crime story. This high up Mormon young man named Mark Hoffman. Turns
Mhm.
out he was a master forger, and he fooled the Library of Congress with a document called the Oath of a Free Man, which was supposed to be
Well,
the
that's why
first.
he was hanging around with Joseph Smith. They were both con men.
Yeah, well, he was bilking all these institutions out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So he approached the Mormon church with what he called the Salamander Letters, with what he found somehow. And it was examined by experts and deemed to be true, and it went against everything Mormons believed. A salamander is the opposite of Moroni, and it said all this stuff about how Joseph Smith, as the guy Harris wrote it, how he came about his religion. And the leaders of the Mormon church believed it. They believed they were authentic. And they went about trying to buy or confiscate these letters. That's how far they would go to, even if they thought their religion was baloney and harmful. That's how far they would go to protect it, And it always struck me as kind of funny, but it's really an interesting book. And he winds up trying to bomb some people, and he blows himself up. But if you get a chance, you might want to look at that book.
Holy shit. What a crazy twist. I was not expecting that.
Yeah,
That's pretty wild.
It's a true story, and the book it blows my mind. But they were convinced that he had this harmful letter; it would have ruined their religion, and they were trying to buy him off and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, but I wonder if at that point, maybe at that point they just weren't very surprised. I feel like at that point they would have been familiar. I'm not sure the exact history of Mormonism, but this happened in like what, the 1980s.
Yeah,
at that point, I think like all of the stuff about like polyamory, probably at that point all that stuff had come out. In fact, I think even like within like the generation of people who were alive when Joseph Smith was alive, that stuff had come out because there's like a whole bunch of women that testified to that fact in like a courtroom. Again, I'm fuzzy on the details of Mormon history, but I'm sure what to me this says is that the current leadership LDS at the time just was not surprised to see more bad shit come out about Joseph Smith.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, listen, I noticed that you hadn't had any calls, so I decided to speak some more nonsense to you.
Sure, we
It's good to
appreciate
hear
that.
from you.
Thanks for letting me call. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Sure
absolutely.
thing. Have a great one.
You too.
I do really want to brush up on Mormon lore because there's so many people in the ex-religious space where it feels like Mormonism is kind of a black box. We don't know a lot about it other than some of the recruitment methods. And so I really need to brush up because there's a lot of people that I bet are in Mormonism that are ready to deconstruct, but there's not a lot of people in that space yet. But that's definitely somewhere that I think some of us could probably branch out into.
Yeah, I know that there's like the one Mormon apologist who's really been making the rounds, or I think he was more so making the rounds like a couple of months ago, but it's like the whatever Hansen guy. I think Mormons probably do engage in apologetics, but I do think that the deck is pretty stacked against them. I mean, like theologically, historically, I think that there are probably quite a few difficult things to avoid. Um, I don't know. You're gonna have to, if you're an honest Mormon, you're gonna have to bite the bullets related to polyamory. And unfortunately, Joseph Smith publicly condemned polyamory multiple times. So it's kind of hard to work your way out of that one.
Yeah, the contradictions within the religion is pretty wild. But we do have another caller in line. Yep, not a single believer has the balls other than Jonathan to call in, but Jonathan dropped. So we're gonna hope that we might be able to get a believer in here, and maybe they can convert us. We'll find out. But Mika is an atheist calling all the way from Germany. Welcome. You're on the Hang Up, Mika, with Justin and Ian. How you doing?
Hello, everyone. I'm doing great, and you? Hello, can you hear me?
Doing very well. Mm-hmm.
Hello? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, so my point was, when it comes to the categorical imperative, you made the argument that it breaks down with a scenario that you, for example, hiding immigrants in your basement and ISIS knocking on the door. And I would say that's not the case because the categorical imperative implies that you should only act to a maxim you could want to become universal law. And the maxim in this case is not that you're lying to the authorities. The maxim is that you're saving innocent lives.
So I don't think I don't take a stance on whether or not Kant's categorical imperative fails here. I'm not really sure who you'd be addressing. I don't think that I claim that it fails for this reason.
No, you said that in another show, or like, what is your actual thoughts on this?
I'm agnostic to it. I've heard that. I think what they want to say. I think what the Kantian, or like the way that the Kantian arrives at the position that you shouldn't lie, even in a scenario where there's like the Nazi at the door and you're like hiding immigrants or hiding like Jewish people or whatever, or like there's like ICE knocking at the door and you're hiding immigrants. In a scenario like this, I think what Kant says is that you can't lie because in that situation you'd be depriving the like immigration officers or like the Nazis of their autonomy, and like actions that deprive people of autonomy simply can't be universalized, which is why you can't do them. Because if any action that took away autonomy was universalized, then you simply wouldn't have the autonomy to do the action in the first place, which is why it's self-defeating. Although I know that there's tons and tons of Kantian literature, so I know that there are like tons and tons of responses for why that's not the case, or even like amendments to the original like Kantian formulation. So I don't know. I don't take a stance on whether or not deontology fails on that regard.
Yeah, I would say it doesn't defeat their own autonomy when you're lying, because they don't act upon that, but on the request of the authority. So there is essentially you defeat that line by lying in this case, I would say.
Yeah.
It's something else when you lie directly to someone that would defeat their own autonomy in that way. So
Wait,
that's
but
why I
aren't
think
you,
it doesn't break
isn't
down
the
in this
scenario
instance.
you directly lie?
I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, I would say you could actually lie in that case because it's not against the authority of the officers or anything in that case, but to the authority that is instigating it.
Yeah,
You know what
no, I
I mean?
know, but isn't what's going on there
Yeah.
like you deceiving a person?
But that's not the maxim in this case, because the maxim is that you're saving people, and that's what you would want to become universal law.
This is probably an important point of clarification. The maxim includes two things. The maxim includes both the action and the goal that it's intended to achieve. So, for example, let's say my goal is to graduate from college, and the way that I want to do this, the action that I'm taking to achieve that is, I'm going to go to my classes. So, to achieve the goal of going to college, you ought go to your classes. That's the thing that's being universalized is both the action and the goal, and then the connection that the action achieves the goal, that the action is still the thing that achieves the goal. So in that sense, like the deceit is part of the maxim, which is why Kant thinks that you can't universalize lying, is because it's like depriving people of their autonomy to rationally deliberate. But of course, if somebody deprived you of your autonomy to rationally deliberate, well, you couldn't rationally deliberate at that point, which is why Kant wants to say that it's self-defeating. But I think that there's probably interpretations of the categorical imperative. Like I've heard plausible interpretations of the categorical imperative that would permit lying, which of course, like there are obviously scenarios where you should lie. That's obviously not in contention.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it only breaks down in scenarios that have no good answer, like the what was it with the rails, the tram thing, the tram problem? No, what's it called?
The trolley problem.
Yeah, the trolley problem. Yeah, I think that's the only case where it would break down.
You think it breaks down the trolley problem?
Yeah, because there's no good answer to it, or is there?
Well, there's like a pretty typical like Kantian answer to it, which is like you have to not pull that fucking lever. If you do, you're doing murder. Which is like strictly like you can't do that. Like, okay, for Kant it's all about your autonomy, so that's why, like, your agency, and for Kant, if you want to refrain from taking an action, you can refrain from taking actions. When things get sticky, this is like the common critique of Kant, is that he leaves you like powerless in the face of evil, because you can't really take the actions that you need to take. Like you can't really lie to the Nazis under the Kant system, or at least like that's the common critique of it, and that's like the view that Kant himself committed himself to. You can't do that because that would be exercising your autonomy to deprive another person of autonomy, and that just can't be universalized. So instead, you need to like do nothing. Maybe like you need to like stand there silently with the Nazi at the door, awkwardly or something like that.
Or you'd say, I'm not letting you in my house. You don't have the authority to do so, or something like that.
Sure, yeah. But then of course the implication in that scenario is that like they just like kick down your door or something, and then same outcome, like you all die.
But then at least you did the right thing.
Yeah. But I think probably the right thing is lying. So, and it sounds like you agree with that.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that has the best outcome.
It's really cool that I don't know if you've like read Kant in the original German, but it's really cool that I don't know, that's something I would definitely do if I knew German, because like a lot of the German philosophers talk about will in a way that doesn't translate very well to other languages. Like this concept doesn't exist very
Yeah.
like there's like a concept of will in English, but it's not as clear as it seems like it is in German. It seems like a lot of the philosophers talk
Yeah.
about this like notion of will that is just like kind of foreign to me.
Yeah, like Schopenhauer said, you can do as you will, but not will as you will.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know. It's I think that's a good point. But Justin, I don't know if we have more calls in the queue or
Unfortunately, not a single believer in the queue, and no new questions. It seems like so. I think that means we defeated all of them.
yeah, I guess we purged it. We
Yeah.
you know, we got rid of all of the I think it's crazy that we have 1,700 viewers and not a single theist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do they
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's there's the web link. We got to start making like disparaging comments about God or something.
Well, I mean, it is demonstrably true that God in the Bible demands little children, girls, to be sexually assaulted. So that's a thing that Christians don't like so much. But it's in there actually, and people will contend that Numbers 31 isn't about that. But I've got pretty good evidence that it actually is the case. But
Yeah. If you think that your God is not a God that commanded child sex trafficking, call in because he definitely did. You know, it's right there in the Bible. You would know it if you read even the first 5 books.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, Mika, it was good to hear from your friend. If you have another question, you're welcome to call back in, and we'll take you up. But we're gonna hopefully with fingers crossed get a believer in here. I think we lost him. Okay, well, that's that. We do have one person in the screening room, so we'll see if they're a believer or not. But if not, we'll continue on. Now, Ian, on your live streams, I've heard you say quite a few times that you like people to believe in a God concept that is like somehow related to the Abrahamic God, like the Quran, the Bible, and some of the standard formats. Is this because like there's so many people out there that I've seen them too, where like they don't know what the definition of God is, or like, well, God is like energy or some nonsense like that?
It's hard for me to pin down like what specifically is going on with like their psychology, but I almost suspect that they don't even know what they believe. For people that fall outside of it, I like concepts like the God of the Bible, the Torah, or the Quran as ones that are ripe for debate, because the concept is like there are competing models, of course. Maybe you think God is in time, maybe you think he's out of time, maybe you think he's like the Catholic thing that's like divinely simple and like monstrous. But it's at least like clear what the commitments are. Like you aren't like waffling around like God's properties. Like you have a clear idea of whether or not God is all knowing. You have a clear idea about whether or not God is all powerful. You don't need to tiptoe around the debate or stop the debate at like the most basic question and say, I don't know if I don't know if God has thoughts. It's like, okay, I don't really know what we're doing. It's super boring to me. Like it just bores me to tears. Having like a debate with somebody who believes in like some nondescript God that actually doesn't even sound like a God at all. Because I think fundamentally, like I could just agree with you. I could literally just agree that this thing exists, and then I would still be an atheist. So I'm not really sure what the point is.
Yeah, and the Bible God has thoughts and intentions. Remember Jeremiah 29, like the most famous passage. God says, "I know my plans I have for you." Well, how do you have plans without a thought? How do you make plans without thinking about it? I'm so lost how God could somehow not be able to think or rationalize.
Yeah. I think that there's like there are lots of states, like mental states that are attributed to God, that like he just needs to have something like a mind in the way that we have a mind. He experiences anger, so he has like a qualitative experience, and there's like objects that he has emotions, he has emotional states, and these emotional states are like directed towards something. People sometimes, you hear this a lot with Catholics because they believe in, their monstrosity, their simple monstrosity. But there's some people want to say that it's like just an analogy, that kind of the only way you can talk about God is with analogies. I know that there's a good amount of literature. I haven't looked too deeply into it, but there's a good amount of literature that if you think you can only speak about God in terms of analogies, you might end up as being like something like an atheist Christian, because you can't actually believe in God because you don't even have a God concept.
Yeah, and I was thinking as you were talking about God having thoughts, there's a passage that Christians bring up a lot that defeats this, which is, "My thoughts are not your thoughts."
Yeah.
Or they'll say, "My ways are not your ways." It's from Isaiah, and that if that verse means anything, it means that God had thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. As soon as you said it, I was like, oh yeah, there is that exact verse that you hear to excuse like the atrocities of the world.
Right.
You know, when they're thinking about like which verse to like wheel out. This is an argument that I think is like it's like ripe terrain for I don't know. It's the sort of argument that I want to get better at. I make it on occasion, but I think when you commit yourself to the view that we actually have no fucking idea what God will or won't do, his thoughts are not our thoughts. I think at that point, nothing could ever be evidence for God, because in order for something to be evidence, it needs to be predicted by the hypothesis. The hypothesis needs to say, this thing would happen for this reason within the hypothesis itself. And that's how a lot of the arguments in favor of God, like the evidential arguments, work. You want to say something like, God values beauty, so he's going to make the world beautiful. That's why the beauty of the world is expected if God exists, is because this is something that God wants. But I think you lose the ability to say that God would do anything, or that you expect that God would do something, if you're saying his thoughts are not our thoughts. It just seems like there's this incompatibility where you both want to say, like, listen, we can't make predictions about what God would or wouldn't do. We can't predict that God wouldn't make cancer or that God would cure cancer. We don't know what God would or wouldn't do. But then also you want to say that you do know what God would do with respect to like all the things that you want to consider evidence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when it's like confirming your position, oh, this is what God wants. But it's not confirming your position. You're like, actually, we can't know the mind of God, right? But it's interesting on the thoughts too. There's another one that we find in Deuteronomy 5, where God says, "If only they had such a mind as this, to fear me and to keep all my commandments always, so that it might go well with them." But in the actual text, he's actually expressing his desire for what he wants them to do, which means if he has desires, he has to have some sort of mind and rational thinking capacity, right?
Yeah. I think also, doesn't Paul attribute like explicitly to him like a mind?
Yeah.
There are just like all these mental states that keep on getting attributed to him somehow. It'd be so strange if he didn't have a mind.
It's weird. But we do have a caller in queue. It looks like a Tribulette, an atheist calling from DC, wants to talk to Ian about justifying absolutes, but we'll find out here in a minute. Welcome in, Tribulette. You're on the Hang Up with Justin and Ian. How are you doing?
Hey, bro, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, I was watching your show on allegedly Ian. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Yes. Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Yeah, you were talking briefly to a presuppositionalist, and he had asked you to. He had said that you couldn't justify the logical absolutes, and you said that you could.
Mm-hmm.
And you did it, and you said you could do it by, what was it? It showing. Well, actually, instead of me putting the words in your mouth, could you explain to me how you would justify them?
Yeah, I think things get a bit tricky when you're working with like. So, okay, let me back up. There's a couple of things. There's a really important distinction to get clear on when talking to a presuppositionalist. This is like if you audience member, you caller ever find yourself talking to a presuppositionalist, this is like maybe the most important thing to get clear on, and they will switch up on you. They will switch this up on you. You want to get clear on whether or not they're asking you for what explains the fact that logic is the way that it is in like a metaphysical sense, like what makes it so that logic has like the nature that it has, and then they'll switch it to like justification in like an epistemic sense, like how do you know the laws of logic are true? These are two extremely different questions where, for example, maybe what explains my existence, or like maybe what explains like the nature of electricity, let's take something like electricity. Maybe what explains the fact that electricity works the way that it works is like deeper facts about like electrons and then like electron fields and like geometry of space-time. Like that would explain why electricity works the way that it works. But if the question is something like, well, how do I know that electricity exists? That's a totally different answer that comes down to things like empirical evidence, seeing like, and then at this point, like we've literally just like observed, I think, electrons, if I'm not mistaken, under a microscope. So that's the first important distinction to get clear on. But if what you're asking is, how do we give like a justification for logic from working with things that are like pretty close to the foundation, you're not going to be able to give like an inferential. Go for it.
I meant more of I think he was asking like, how do you know that they're true?
Sure. Yeah. So something that's important to know about laws of logic is that the laws of logic are the things that govern valid inference. So when you have, the cool thing about logic is that you can give arguments, you can make inferences, you can infer from premises to a conclusion. That if these premises are true, then the conclusion is true. That means that any justification for logic itself, it needs to be like non-inferential. It needs to be like instant. Like there can't be like a set of like premises or something. Like it just needs to be like within the belief itself, like some sort of like self-defeat, basically. So the justification that I like giving for go for it.
The law of identity. Yeah. How would you know that's true?
You would know that that's true just based on like the way that the question is posed in the first place. So you would know that that's true based on what would follow if it wasn't. If the law of identity weren't true, then the question that was just posed to me would be incoherent. Things like true wouldn't have an identity. Things like the law of identity wouldn't have an identity. There just wouldn't be identities if the law of identity weren't true. In fact, it's literally unthinkable. You can't think about the law of identity not being true, because in order to have any thought at all, it needs to be about something which requires like a consistent identity. You can't have a thought about an object that isn't self-identical. There is no thought there. I can't think about like the square that isn't a square. It is literally unthinkable when did you to say that the law of identity is false.
When did you say that's not a justification, though? Like, aren't you just presupposing?
No, it definitely is.
All right, because but wouldn't that procedure that you just gave me, right? We're talking about the law of identity, right? Like, it would be impossible for you to reference things. Isn't that itself reliant on a logical absolute?
No, it's like, a non-inferential justification. What?
Mm-hmm. Like so the law of non-contradiction, right? So if identity wasn't true, you wouldn't be able to reference things, right?
So
yeah, but
the thrust of the critique is more so that the falsity of the law of identity is literally unthinkable. It's not possible to think about an object that is not identical to itself. Like I literally can't even think about like a square that isn't a square. I can't think about like the chair that isn't a chair.
If you were to
the fact that the opposite of the law of identity is literally unthinkable means that the only thing that is thinkable is the law of identity. Its negation is unthinkable. The law of identity is thinkable, though. Therefore, it's it in the sense that it's unthinkable. It also likewise can't be affirmed. There is no content that is actually being affirmed there. There is no thought that corresponds to like a statement like the law of identity is false.
Right, because like if you falsify the law of identity, what did you falsify? Not the law of identity, because it's not the law of identity, right? Like
Yeah.
the law of identity can't even be the law of identity without the law of identity.
Yeah,
But
I think that's probably
guess,
how you
like,
go about justifying laws of logic is by demonstrating that the negation is literally unthinkable.
But the negation of the law of identity would assume non-contradiction.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably true. Although I think in some
Right,
sense,
so
probably all
that's
the
why
laws of logic are saying roughly the same thing, which is just that reality is self-consistent.
They are.
Yeah. What is.
Okay, but
Yeah.
But so even still, you wouldn't just say that we're just presupposing the logical absolutes. Like that's my position. I presuppose.
No, I don't think it's presupposing it to point out that like it's literally unthinkable. That like the negation simply cannot be the case. Like it could never be affirmed, the negation of this, because there is no thought that corresponds to it.
Right, but how do you know that you're just unable to negate it? Like the difference between something being unable to negate and you just being unable to negate, aren't they going to look identical?
But from my view, the question is like, from my view, how do I arrive at the thought that the law of identity is true? Like how do I think the law of identity, and it's based on the fact that I can't think the negation of it, because otherwise I would have the thing that isn't itself. So thoughts are about things. That's a unique feature about thoughts, is that there's like an object of the thought. When you think, you're thinking about something, but the thought, there is no thought that corresponds to the negation of the law of identity, because you'd be thinking about nothing in particular. You'd be thinking about both the thing, but also not the thing.
So I agree with you. However, we might just not be smart enough to falsify it. And so what I'm saying is our inability to falsify it, and perhaps it can't be falsified, those are going to look identical to us. Well, whether it can't be falsified or we just can't falsify it.
I don't want to cut in. I think it was a really good conversation, but I feel like this is starting to go down the road eventually of solipsism. Like you can't absolutely prove something, so therefore we shouldn't make statements about it.
I would say you could still make a statement about it. I would just say that you just have to presuppose it, because like what if there's two states that look identical, then what sense does it make to make a decision on them? Right, like so
but there
you
aren't
have
two
like
states here. Is what confuses me, is that there doesn't appear to be two states from what I can see. Like one of these options is literally unthinkable. There simply isn't a thought there. It's the denial of thought. Like you'd literally be thinking like the denial of thought itself, which is of course like immediately self-falsifying.
For you, and also for me, and any person that I've ever met. But perhaps like we're stupid. You know what I mean? Those are the two states. Like there's two states. One, we aren't smart enough to falsify it. The second state is it can't be falsified. And what I'm saying is both of those states epistemically are going to look identical to us. So how can you say it's the first state and not the latter?
Yeah, that's okay. What you're saying, if what you're saying was true, then you'd have to take like the same stance to like obviously self-defeating propositions like I think that thoughts don't exist. that the thought that thoughts don't exist is like instantly falsifying. It's self-falsifying. Contained within the content of that thought is like
I
the
can falsify
disproof
it.
of the thought. It like the very thought itself instantly disproves it.
I can falsify that by presupposing a logical absolute, because
So
you can that thoughts don't exist is a contradiction. Yes, by using the law of non-contradiction, I can falsify the proposition that I thought that thoughts don't exist. I can by assuming the law of non-contradiction. What I can't do is falsify the law of non-contradiction. I would have to use it in order to assess it, which means I'm already assuming it's true.
No, I don't think that's true. I think that like just like the content that's being affirmed there, like the fact that you are affirming something means that you are basically stating that something is the case. But then there isn't any claim about what is the case if thoughts both exist and don't exist. There is no claim about what reality is like. And if there's no claim about what reality is like, there isn't a thought there.
So, how did you come to that conclusion?
Which one? Which is there like a specific premise that you want me to justify?
Your entire, well, right. Well, I'm talking about what I'm saying is like, so your entire logical process. And here's the thing, I'm actually agreeing with you.
People do this. They try to like hand wave it. No, give me the specific premise. Like what the presuppositionalist wants to do is they want to say, well, justify the laws of logic and then like rip their earbuds out. And then, while I'm giving like the proof of the laws of logic, and then put it back in and say, did you use logic to arrive at that conclusion? No, give me the specific premise that you want justified and I'll justify it. But just like vague, like hand waving or like vague pointing towards I think you used logic there. That's simply not going to cut it.
Okay, so no, what I'm talking about. So what I was going to say was like, so the like that brief argument that you gave about 30 seconds ago. Like I don't remember what it was now. But what I was going to say about it was that it assumes the logical absolutes.
Which one?
Like so, even like I don't remember what it was now.
But the conclusion that you want to make, but how? In what way does it presuppose it? It's non-inferential.
Okay, so let's talk about. So I forgot the other one. Let's talk about. I thought that thoughts don't exist.
Yeah.
Right. So that would assume identity is true.
Sorry, to say that you have the thought that thoughts don't exist. What is it claiming to be the case
I'm
when you think that thoughts don't exist?
Yeah,
like what's actually being thought about there?
That was a bad example. It was a bad example. Okay, let's say the law of identity is false, right?
Yeah.
So things are not what they are.
There are things
right?
that are not themselves, is the claim. Right?
No, I want to take one step back here. So, to me, the logical absolutes, identity, excluded middle, and non-contradiction, correct?
Yes. That's the three classical laws of logic. So, yeah.
Right. So, if you say the law of identity is false, you're saying something is what it isn't.
Yeah, that there's a thing that is what it isn't. Yes.
Right. And why can't that be true?
Because there is no thought that corresponds to that. There is so think about something that is what it isn't. What's being thought about there?
Right. And
my claim is that there's nothing. There is nothing there. There isn't like actually like a genuine thought there. Because any thought that you could have would not qualify as the thing that's not itself.
I agree. So, and I guess this is the point that I was trying to make was that
agree that it's unthinkable.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of it. Is what I'm saying.
Yes, which is why to affirm it would be self-defeating because you can't actually affirm it.
No, it's not self-defeating. It's not because you said something that I don't think you can demonstrate. You said it's unthinkable. You don't know that. You can't think of it.
No, I do know that. Because in order to think
how do you know that no one can think of it?
Yes, because in order to think it, you would need to both hold that there is something that is the case while denying that very thing. That there is no thought there.
Mm-hmm.
Because thoughts, in order to have a thought that's about something as opposed to having no thought at all, it needs to differentiate between what is, like the thing being thought about, and the what isn't, the thing that's not being thought about.
Right. So you're saying in order to do that, you have to think about something that's not there.
No,
I'm
way
sorry,
worse
that's
than
not what you
that.
said.
You need to
You have to think
it's
about
almost
something
like
and not think
I
of it.
actually don't even know how to describe it, right? Like you both need to think it and like
Right.
not think it, basically.
You have to think of it and
Any
not think
thought
it.
that you
Here's the
have
thing.
couldn't qualify as the thing that is not itself. So that
so
means that
now,
it is
the
unthinkable
reason-
because no thought could fit that qualification. Since if you have like the thought, that thought is like about a thing, but then it's also about not that thing. So it's about nothing. There's nothing that the thought is about. There is no thought there.
Okay. But you said you have to think of it and not think of it. Now, the reason that's absurd is because it violates another logical absolute.
No, it's so
it
that is not the
violates not a
claim.
contradiction.
That's not
Okay,
the claim.
but
The claim is that you would both need
but-
to. Whoa. The claim is that you would both need to think about it. But then, of course, in virtue of thinking about it, you're not thinking about it. So you're not, anything that you think about is not the thing that is not itself. It doesn't fit the criteria of the object that is itself and isn't itself. Because if you're thinking about it, then it just is itself.
Would that be a contradiction?
That would be a contradiction, but it's not false because it's a
Right,
contradiction.
exactly.
The falsity
That's
of
why
it comes from the fact that the thought doesn't satisfy the criteria.
But you're appealing to a contradiction.
I said that's not
how
the
you
thing
know
that makes
the law
it
of identity is
false.
true.
Wait, I think that you have like a dogmatic like desire. I don't know why you have like a dogmatic desire to want to hold on to this. I literally just clarified that the fact that it's a contradiction is not why I'm claiming that it's false.
And what was that reason?
Yes. Yeah. I'll say it like a third time. So it's because anything that you're thinking about, if there is like this object that is not itself, anything that you're thinking about wouldn't be that object. So it's literally not thinkable because anything that you are thinking about has an identity. There's like a specific thing that is being thought about.
But Ian, see, now you're doing the other thing that I was saying. Like, so now you're saying like you can't think of, you've run into reasoning errors when trying to think of that, and so would I. And what I'm saying is, if we run into reasoning errors while trying to falsify the law of identity, the most we can say is we can't falsify it. What you can't say is it can't be falsified.
So I think that there's like kind of like a fundamental failure to track here. It's not a reasoning error because it's non-inferential. It's a claim about reality that this is literally unthinkable, because if you were to think about it, then you just trivially wouldn't be thinking about the thing that's not itself, because you'd be thinking about a thing that is itself.
And you say that wouldn't be a reasoning error?
Because it's non-inferential. You're not inferencing from something to the conclusion. You're just like immediately self-falsifying within the thought itself.
Okay, fact, I'm not tracking.
There just isn't like a thought there, is the claim. Like there simply is no thought that corresponds to an object that isn't itself. Because if there was a thought there, then there would be like a thing that it's about, and there isn't, because anything that it's about would have identity, and it doesn't if it's the thing that's not itself.
That's just a contradiction.
It's not a contradiction. That's not the claim.
It is. No, I'm not saying you're claiming it's a contradiction. What I'm saying is you're using contradiction.
It is a contradiction.
You're appealing to the fact that it will be a contradiction.
That's not why it's false. It's not false because it's a contradiction. It is a contradiction, but of course, to not beg the question, I'm not claiming that the reason why it's false is because it's a contradiction. I'm claiming that this is literally not thinkable, because to think about it would demonstrate that it has an identity.
That would be okay. In order, if it didn't have an identity, you couldn't think about it, because if you thought about it, that would mean it has an identity. That you are saying it's a contradiction.
Within the statement, like
I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
Caller accused Ian of using contradictions to justify something. You're doing it right now. You're saying what Ian is saying is wrong because it's a contradiction.
Yes. I definitely
double standard here. Okay.
No, it's not a double standard. So I agree with the things that Ian is saying. But what I'm saying,
do you agree with the things that I'm saying?
Do contradictions exist?
So no. So
are you just like LARPing? Like, what is this?
We just need an answer though. Do you think contradictions exist?
No.
You understand, like, the laws of logic. Part of the goal here is to establish that contradictions don't exist. Like, that's like the basis here, right?
No, that's not what I said at the beginning of the call.
The law of non-contradiction doesn't address contradictions?
I didn't say that's not. I didn't say that proposition is false. What I said, that is not what the call was about. That's not what me and Ian were talking about the entire call. So let's get you up. So this is so.
No,
Ian, I heard Ian
I listened to the whole thing.
Call. Okay, well, you were saying things that was wrong.
No, I was just pointing out that you're accusing him of something that you said he couldn't do like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, and I said he's not doing it because he's. So let me explain before you say you understand. Let me explain.
I don't need a history. I don't need a conversation history lesson.
Holy
you
shit,
just
dude.
Continue talking to Ian, man.
Maybe we're talking to like a real deal dialetheist. Maybe this guy does think that contradictions can be true or something. I feel like hearing him like re-explain the conversation to you, I feel like there were like 20 contradictions in that.
Okay.
So, I could
Well, I mean, I don't know what we're going with here.
False, then there is something that is not itself, and
right.
is that
so
thing itself?
I don't think the law of identity I don't think the law of identity can be falsified. So, but what I'm saying is, I can't falsify it, but what I can't do is prove it to be true. I cannot demonstrate its truth.
You demonstrate the truth by demonstrating that you couldn't possibly falsify it.
You told a caller that you could demonstrate that it's true.
Yes.
What
correct.
I'm saying is I can't prove it to be false.
Yes. So let me walk you through. So, okay. Law of identity is false. Let's think about the law of identity being false. So let's think there's an object that's not itself. This object is not itself. That is to say, this object is not the object that is not itself. So then it's just not an example. So in fact, this thing just doesn't exist. Yep. So then you agree that there is no such object.
Yeah, I agree with you, but that doesn't demonstrate its truthfulness.
Okay.
What I demonstrate is that you can't falsify it.
Okay,
well, you can't falsify it. I can't falsify it. I don't know anyone that can falsify it. That doesn't. What I just did is
falsify it. Being and you agreed with my falsification of it.
Okay, I think the other guy had mentioned solipsism. He thought the conversation was going to go there for some reason, but this is a great example, right? What you can't do is falsify solipsism. But that doesn't mean that it's true.
That's just false. In fact, it's probably like solipsism is probably self-defeating. So, I mean, there's like a couple of critiques of solipsism. One is that, of course, like mental states are about something, but if all that exists is your mind, there's nothing for the mental states to be about, because in order to be about something, it would need to be about something other than the mind. Like, the thoughts that I'm having in my mind are not just about like different thoughts that I have in my mind. That's not what's going on there. Additionally, I mean, if solipsism is true, then external world skepticism is true, but you can't possibly entertain an argument for why the external world doesn't exist, because that would require time, and time exists in the external world.
I don't.
Okay.
Like I don't.
And solipsism is self-defeating.
Okay, but that would rely on the law of non-contradiction, and so that's the point that I was trying to make. So you were saying you could demonstrate the
Is it a defeat
logical
of
absolutes
solipsism?
by showing how if.
To overcome solipsism, the solipsist doesn't deny that logic exists. The solipsist
No.
denies that the external world
I was just
exists.
using
Hey,
I was
Trip,
only using
Trip,
solipsism.
Hey,
to
buddy,
try to
hold on.
demonstrate-
We need you to back up from your phone. Are you yelling into your phone and your mic is peaking and it's driving everyone
Okay.
crazy?
Oh, sorry. Am I better
Go on.
now?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. All right. So I only brought up solipsism to give an example of what I was talking about the difference of them not being able to prove something false doesn't demonstrate its truth.
But I think you
That's
can
all.
prove it false.
That's the only reason. Right. So, but you prove it false by using self-defeating arguments. Self-defeating arguments are contingent upon non-contradiction.
No. So a self-defeating argument, like trying to argue that something is true based on self-defeat, the way that it works is that there is no inference there. It's just immediately stipulated, like the falsity of the statement itself is just stipulated within the statement.
So, remember when I asked about the law of identity?
Yeah.
And you said something to the extent of, if the law of identity were true, I mean, if the law of identity were false, then it would make it true.
Yeah.
Right. So isn't that self-defeating?
No, it's the opposite. That's the demonstration that the denial of the law of identity is self-defeating.
Right. That's what I said. The denial of identity would be self-defeating. Right. Now, you're saying that doesn't demonstrate a contradiction. That's why it's self-defeating.
No, that's not the argument.
Because by trying to prove it true, you assume it's false.
No. So by trying to demonstrate, by affirming, by making the statement that there are objects that are not themselves, in order to affirm this statement, the falsity of that statement is going to be contained within itself, because you're saying that there are objects that have the identity of not having identity. You're literally stipulating that they do have identity. Whether or not they can both have identity or not have identity is a separate question, because your claim is that they don't have identity, and in order to make that claim, you're giving them identity. So
my claim isn't that they don't have identity. So what my claim is that
you don't even know what you're saying.
I do know what I'm saying. I was about to tell you what I was saying before you cut me off. So what I was trying to say was that your proposition that in order to falsify the law of identity, something would have to have the identity of not having identity. That is contingent upon the law of non-contradiction.
Nope.
Identity. Okay. What is the logical negation of identity?
You're saying that there's something that is not self-identical, that there's at least one thing that lacks identity.
I asked a question.
And I answered,
I know what
you
I'm
asked
saying,
what's the negation of the law of identity, and the answer was the negation of the law of identity is that there is at least one thing that does.
That's not what I asked.
You disagree? That's not what you asked?
No, identity. Identity itself. What is the negation of identity?
Non-identity?
Exactly.
Yes.
So I did right. So when you use the logical negations of something, you're assuming the logical absolutes.
No. Why would that be true?
The logical negation of you have a thing and not a thing. Either the thing or not the thing. A thing is the thing.
So you take issue with like the fact that like words have definitions?
No, we're not talking about words. We're talking about the logical absolutes.
Something like what it means to not be another thing. That's pretty definitional.
Right.
To
And
say,
that
and if you
definition is
don't want to
contingent
reject the
upon-
not operator, because that one's, you'd be saying that the not operator does not exist. So you're stipulating
not
that there's
rejecting the not
something
operator.
that is not.
I'm not rejecting the not operator.
So you accept the not operator.
Yes.
Okay, sure. So we have the not operator. Then we have, so let's say we're rejecting law of identity. We have, a thing that is not identical to itself. A thing that lacks identity. But, then its identity is that it lacks identity. So it just has an identity.
So identity is not identity.
Stipulated within that is that it has an identity. So it's not true to say that it doesn't have an identity.
Ian, why can't identity be a non-identity?
Why can't identity be non-identity? Because in stipulating that it lacks identity, you're giving it an identity.
Right.
So then
you
it
don't
has
see
an
how
identity.
that's contradictory? You don't see how
it is contradictory, but it being
right,
contradictory is not why it's false. The reason why it's false is that it immediately affirms the falsity of the statement within the statement itself.
Exactly. So the problem is that I'm affirming both is truth and non-truth at the same time. I'm not running into a flaw.
You keep on running directly into the point.
The law of non-contradiction.
I have no idea.
And for some reason, you think you're not doing it.
Point. I don't know how many times I need to say this. The reason why that statement is self-falsifying is not because it's a contradiction. It is a contradiction, but the reason why it's false is not because it's a contradiction. It's because it literally stipulates within the statement itself that the statement isn't true. It stipulates directly within the statement itself.
That's the contradiction.
It states directly. I agree, it is a contradiction, but that's not why it's false. The reason why it's false is because it stipulates its own falsity.
And why can't it do that?
It can. That means it's false.
Okay, well, why can't it affirm both as truth and non-truth at the same time? What's the problem
if it affirms that it's not true, then it's affirming that it's not true.
But if it affirms that it's true too, then it's also affirming that it's true.
But in order to affirm so specifically, also to be clear, you just did one of the presuppositionalist pivots that I was talking about earlier. You pivoted from the law of identity about a thing being identical to a statement being true and not true. You pivoted from identity to the law of non-contradiction. I don't know if you're a precept, but you did exactly the sort of slippery thing that a precept would like to do. I'm not going to let you pivot. Let's go back to the law of identity. Let's talk about identity. If a thing lacks identity and it has the identity of lacking identity, then the claim that it lacks identity is just self-falsifying because it has identity.
Ian, the question of the call was about how you're able to demonstrate the truthfulness of the logical absolutes. And I use identity for an example.
With the critique I just gave.
Okay. I'm not.
By the way, this is what precepts do too. Is that after you give them, I was talking about this earlier too. That precepts like to rip their earbuds out and then just not listen to the response and then do platitudes afterwards. This was a perfect example of that. I gave a really in-depth explanation, and then he started summarizing the argument from the beginning. This guy, I don't know.
You said I pivoted.
You say that you're an atheist. I think you'd actually make a really good precept.
I said you claim that I pivoted, and that's false, and I could demonstrate that that's false. The entire call, the point that I was trying to make, I'm trying to explain the connection, right? Because you seem lost. You seem like you said I pivoted, how I went from the law of identity to the law of non-contradiction. No, they were connected. I used the law of non-identity for an example to show in order for you to demonstrate the law of identity, you have to assume the law of non-contradiction. That is not a pivot.
And is that all true?
Yes, that is true.
Fuck, self-defeating, dude.
I don't.
Brutal.
Yes, it's self-defeating. Right. That's why I presuppose the logical absolutes.
Hey, Trib, we've been at this for 35 minutes. I don't feel like we're making progress anymore, and we've got another caller that's been waiting. Unless Ian has an objection, I think maybe we can move on.
Nope. Yeah, let's move on.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in, friend.
Genuine agony.
Hi, guys.
That's rough. I think he should convert to Christianity. I think that's he needs to be a preceptor, I think. But He must. I don't know. Maybe he's been watching some precept streams, and he heard something that tickled his fancy. Now he wants to use it on other atheists. I don't know. It's wild. But we've got Paulie from Australia calling in, asking a question about whether or not Jesus is adopted. So we'll get Paulie in here. Welcome in, Paulie. You're on the Hang Up with Justin and Allegedly, and how you doing?
Yeah, guys, great to hear from you. Great to speak to you. Justin, this is probably more of a question for you. You've got really good knowledge on the Bible. So I was brought up Pentecostal from when I was a child, but I never actually ended up receiving the Holy Spirit. I ended up becoming atheist because of the questions that I kept on asking. So I was challenged recently by a Jehovah's Witness came in to the house, and I was trying to ask questions, and then they said, "Have you read the Bible?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I haven't actually picked it up and read it." So the first thing I did went straight to the New Testament, and I couldn't even get past the first passage without starting to ask questions. I met Matthew 1 to 1:16, where they go through the lineage of Jesus, and they get to Joseph, and I think, wow, how did they keep track of all this? That's absolutely fantastic. And then I start saying, wait, wasn't Jesus born from a Virgin Mary? Why are they going down the lineage of Joseph and to fulfill prophecy when Jesus didn't actually come from Joseph? I was wondering if you had, because I've asked ChatGPT. I didn't get a very good response from that. I've asked a couple of the ex-Pentecostals, and they didn't really give me a great answer. I was wondering what your thoughts was on it as well.
So that's what you mean by adopted. I assumed you were talking about the Gospel of Mark, which is an adoptionist theology, meaning Jesus wasn't born God. He was adopted by God. He was elevated to God status after he did everything God wanted him to do, similar to a Greek or Roman man who became God. So you're asking, how could he be the Messiah if he's adopted? Well, I've got some news, man. Not only is this a problem, because neither one of them are physical blood to David, but if you read the Hebrew Bible, it says on 2 occasions that the Messiah or the king must come from the physical body of David. That's going to be 2 Samuel 7:12, and it's also going to show up in, I think, Psalm 89. I can find it for you real quick, though. I've got the reference written down somewhere, but pretty sure it's Psalm 89. So one of the problems with the lineage is that the Messiah, we have no reason to believe that the Messiah could be adopted by somebody. It seems like they need to be actual from the lineage. In fact, Micah 5:2 suggests that. People misinterpret Micah 5:2 because they think it's referring to somebody born in the town of Bethlehem, but the actual reading of that is that they need to be from the lineage of David, not from the town of Bethlehem. But we don't have to worry about that. Give me a second. I'm going to give you these verses. It's going to be in... Actually, I'll just grab Psalm 89. It's not on my list. And nevertheless, I'll read you 2 Samuel 7. It says, "When your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring after you, who shall come forth from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever." So the throne of this kingdom forever is a lineage that comes from the body of David. So we would expect that adoption isn't going to cut it. And then let me grab Psalm 89. I think we want verse 34.
ChatGPT gave me. Yeah, ChatGPT said it was a common practice that if they were an adopted child, that would be included in the lineage. And I'm like, wait a minute, no, that doesn't sound right. Why would God accept that, or why would he predict it like that? That just seems like a faulty prophecy there. Yeah.
The promise is reiterated in Psalm 89. So if you go down, it's in like verse 3 and 4. It gets restated in verse 34 to 37 in more explicit terms. And the psalm says, "I will not violate my covenant or alter the word that went forth from my lips. Once and for all, I have sworn by my holiness, I will not lie to David. His line shall continue forever, and his throne endure forever. before me like the sun. It shall be established forever like the moon, and enduring witness like the skies. So he's saying the lineage of David is connected to the throne of David, right? So he says, my lineage, or David's lineage, and the throne will continue. Well, that lineage is, as we find in 2 Samuel, is going to be from his body. And the funny thing is, if you're reading a Bible translation, a lot of times it says here, in the NRSV, it says his line shall continue forever. It actually says his seed, meaning the seed, right? So same thing 2 Samuel says, it says he will come from your seed, from your body. So I don't see a good reason to believe that Matthew and Luke are telling a story that could justify Jesus being the Messiah. And there's another problem, by the way, a couple of them. In Matthew chapter 1, there is like a huge error that was committed by Matthew. There's more than one error by Matthew. But if you go down to the passage where he lists Jeconiah, the last person in the lineage prior to the Exodus in Babylon, he says that this person was in the line of the Messiah. Well, if you go to Jeremiah 22:30, it's a huge problem because Jeconiah and all of his future children were cursed to never sit on the throne again. So it says, thus saith the Lord, record this man as childless, a man who shall not succeed in his days, for none of his offspring shall succeed in sitting on the throne of David and ruling again in Judah. Which means if Jesus came through the line of Jeconiah, he's already disqualified just on that account. He's toast. He's done. Yeah, he's done.
Oh my God.
Now, here's the craziest thing. Luke makes a similar error. So if you go to Luke, you'll find that when he goes through the line of David, he doesn't go David to Solomon. He goes David to Nathan. Nathan's the brother of Solomon. The problem with this is the promise was given specifically to Solomon. The passage that we just read in 2 Samuel, the next one in line that he says, I will establish his kingdom forever, that is Solomon. That's the next one that's going to be established forever. So you can't have the kingly lineage go through Nathan. Nathan was never a king. And God specifically said it's going to go through Solomon.
Jeez Louise. We pull one thread and then it all just starts to unravel, doesn't it? Oh, God.
Yeah.
Well,
this book only makes sense if you're not reading it.
Yeah, I've actually picked up the thing and now it's like more and more questions just keep popping up. Anyway,
yeah, there's so much.
Justin, that was fantastic, man. I really appreciate that, buddy.
Sure thing. I'm always happy to answer Bible questions.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Ian. I didn't get to talk to you, but it was great to see you. I watch a lot of your content as well. It was fantastic to talk to you guys. I really appreciate it, and hope you guys have a fantastic rest of the day.
Yeah, you too.
You do the same.
Thanks, guys. Okay, see you later.
Cheers. All right, well, that's an interesting question. I remember when I was preparing to go from Bible college to seminary, I remember specifically trying to figure out how Jesus could somehow be the Messiah, even though I know he didn't fulfill the prophecies. I knew he wasn't really from the line of David, but I'm like, I don't know. He rose again. Mark has him as an adopted son of God, like David in Psalm 2. I'm like, I don't know, maybe the original Jesus was an adopted son of God just because he was so awesome, like Samson or something, like one of those Bible heroes. But like the more you think about it, you're more like, this doesn't work. Like the Trinity is utter nonsense. To me, and I think you've talked about the Trinity a few times. Danny loves talking about the Trinity. More and more, I'm getting more into the Trinity because it's so nonsensical. I'm like, How could the Trinity even work? It ruins everything that the Bible says about God, like doesn't apply to Jesus. And then it says things about Jesus that says it can't apply to God.
Yeah, I'm convinced that the Trinity on its face is probably incoherent, but when you add in the hypostatic union, I actually just think that there's like maybe like 10 or 20 like immediate contradictions.
Right.
You know, immediately it contradicts the idea that he's not a man. You know, you want to say this motherfucker grows in wisdom. Give me a break. It's so blatant. Like Jesus grows in wisdom. Are you kidding? He's all knowing, perfectly wise, and then he grew in wisdom. Come on. Like what are we doing here? It's just so cooked. You want to say like humans are not all knowing, but God's all knowing. So Jesus is both all knowing and not all knowing. Humans are not all powerful, but God's all powerful. So they're both all powerful. Jesus is both all powerful and not all powerful. Like basically, like every property that they want to ascribe to God. Maybe they want to say Jesus is like perfectly rational or like perfectly good, and maybe that's fine. He does the best that he can from the position. But maybe he doesn't do the best that he can from the position if he's all powerful. Maybe he's obligated to like cure cancer too.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because while he's definitely not all powerful in the Bible or all knowing, to me it's one of those weird things, because like the Bible says that he limited himself, like he gave up some of his divinity when he became a man. But okay, well, but if you gave up some of your divinity, it just means you're not a god. Like you were temporarily not a god. And I'm so confused about how the body of Jesus plays into it, because if God is unchangeable and he can't have parts, remember, then we have to assume that the body was not part of God. Well, now you're saying that Jesus's body was just a vessel for some form of godness, but then you can't say that Jesus is 100% God, because he's part God and part not God at that point. It's so messy.
Yeah, I think, if I were a Christian, I would be rejecting like divine simplicity for like other reasons. Like but here's the problem, is that divine simplicity is like a strong doctrine of the Catholic Church, which is like the only plausible one. Like if Christianity is true, it would have to be Catholicism. Orthodoxy, definitely not like Protestantism. Like, okay, one thing that's you'll have thoughts about this, but Jesus is an idiot. He's a complete fucking moron. If the way that you're supposed to be approaching the Bible is that you're supposed to be reading it yourself and then evaluating what the true church is. If Jesus gave the Bible to a bunch of illiterate fucking people, and that's how you're supposed to be using it, Jesus is an idiot. He's a moron. For the vast majority of history so far, you just can't. It's ridiculous. It's so obviously. I think Protestantism is cooked. I think it's so cooked. The idea that that's rough. How it's supposed to work.
Yeah. And Jesus, the character of Jesus himself in the book is really strange. We do have somebody in the screening room. We'll grab our next guest soon. But it's funny, both Jesus and Paul, they're bragging about being, like Paul says, he's a Pharisee of Pharisees. And Jesus is supposed to be a Hebrew rabbi, but neither one of these people once quotes from the Hebrew Bible. They always quote from the Greek Old Testament, which is weird. And people, the rabbis knew at the time that the Greek Old Testament was an abysmal translation of the Hebrew. They wrote about it in the Talmud. So it's like, we know that this wasn't a good translation. It's like, how come Jesus didn't know? Did this guy never learn to read Hebrew scrolls? Because even when he reads it in Luke 4, he reads from a scroll given to him at a synagogue, and he quotes the Greek text. If you look at the Hebrew text, it doesn't match what he said. You have to go to, there's a whole inserted line that's not in the Hebrew text, but it is in the Greek text. So he obviously didn't have the Hebrew text.
Do Christians want to run like the Islam apologetics, where they say, listen, it's been corrupted. The text has been corrupted. Jesus had it right. The original Hebrew must be corrupted.
Yeah, that might be it. Well, listen, friends, we're going to take our next caller, but we have not had a single Christian stand up and do 1 Peter 3:15. Not a single Christian tonight has been even willing to give an attempt to justify the hope that's within them and give a reason why anyone should believe in the Bible or Jesus Christ's divinity or even the God of the Hebrew Bible. We'd love to hear a good argument. And again, even if we don't agree with your position, remember, there's a whole audience listening. You have the potential to convert people in the audience to your viewpoint, even if you don't convert us. So think about that. Remember, Jesus wants a full harvest. Remember, he said the fields are ready to harvest. They're ready to reap. They're full. So that's your job. You're the harvesters. So come get your sickle and we'll talk about it. Frank, though, is calling in from Florida, an atheist, and wants to talk, interestingly, about IP, so inspiring philosophy. Welcome in, Frank. You're on to Hang Up with Justin and Ian. How you doing?
Hey, Justin. What's up? Hey, Ian. Fan of you guys. I've been watching Justin for since basically he started on YouTube, and I'm a huge fan. And basically, I wanted to ask you, Justin, if you ever came across Inspired Philosophy's weird take on Genesis, how he says that that the first books of Genesis are like a temple inauguration, and how Adam and Eve are like the first priestesses. And now he's saying in terms of Exodus, how the numbers are not literal but figurative numbers. So I wanted to see if you can give me like some sort of take on it, or if you can make a video about it or something like that, just to help me out with that, you know?
Yeah, so these are copes, right? These are copes. When you get to the text and you realize that they don't match history, they don't match science, you have to invent new ways of reading it. Oh, well, it didn't mean to say this literally. These are like figurative numbers. Or actually, this is a metaphor about the temple because it was written after the temple was already established, right? And to be sure, there is a connection with temple imagery and gardens. That's why the old ziggurats in Mesopotamia had hanging gardens, because they're replicating the mountain forest that the deities live in. That's why in Gilgamesh, they want to go to the mountain of God. They have to defeat Humbaba in the forest, in the garden, to even get in there and get God's trees. So there is some symbolism between the garden state and the temple, but that's basically it. The rest of the books have nothing to do. Now, Exodus obviously was written after the temple was already formed, and is trying to answer, hey, why do we do all this stuff? Where'd all this stuff come from, right? And so that's where you get this whole tabernacle thing. Well, when we were in the forest, God gave us instructions for the tabernacle.
Wow.
Tabernacle. and that's why the temple is the way it is today, right? So, but the reality is, like, even the first chapters of the first 11 chapters of Genesis are clearly polemics against already known, we'll say Mesopotamian, because maybe the Neo-Assyrians might mix in there as well. But they're just polemics against Babylonian literature for the most part. The Adam and Eve narrative is a polemic against the creation narrative by Marduk, and also the Enuma Elish. The brother fighting was really well known in Mesopotamian and Egyptian texts. It was a really common motif, but that's actually commentary on different kingdoms, like the younger kingdom supplanting the older kingdom. That's a different story. Even the tower. The tower that they're making fun of, that has a Sumerian root as well. There was a big mound that they were building to reach the heavens, and the gods looked down and said, no, you don't. And they confused everyone's languages, and they divided, right? That was already in their text. All the stories in the first 11 chapters, the flood, all of it, all those stories existed before the Bible was written. The 11 chapters of Genesis, the primeval history, was written to say, actually, everyone knows these stories, but here's how it really happened. And then they put their God into it. That's what they're doing in the first 11 chapters of Genesis. It has nothing to do with imagery of the temple. If you take anything in the Bible, any large book, or even two books like Genesis and Exodus, and you say, something in this resembles something over here. There's no limit to what you can connect it to. That's why I show in the Bible every Bible passage that is connected to my rock dug. Because if you have a focal point, you can just go back into that text and find anything that sounds like that focal point. That's what someone like IP is doing. They're trying to say, here's my target, and let me go find verses that fulfill what I think my target should be.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, the thing I've gathered from IP is like he's very dishonest, in the sense of like, I know he wants to make Christianity like liable, but he makes like these outlandish claims, and there are Christians out there who are more honest, who will just say, yeah, we believe in Earth creationism, and they'll bite the bullet, but he doesn't. He tries to mix it between evolution and Christianity in order to make it work,
Right. Yeah, it's really weird. And my viewing of IP over the years is that he'll specifically go and quote mine any scholar he can find that agrees with him. He'll read an isolated quote. Sometimes he'll read the quote without even knowing what that author actually believes. Sometimes he'll read a quote that he thinks agrees with him, but if you actually go back and read the book, the author doesn't even agree with them. And then he'll ignore every other piece of literature from a scholar that disagrees with him. All he's doing is quote mining authors and then hoping that you don't know any scholarship. And sometimes he even quote mines old stuff. So he quote mined something by John Walton about the Nephilim that he made like in the 70s. All of his recent work disagrees with what he said back then. His recent work, he does believe that the Nephilim were, the fallen angels mating with human beings. That's what he believes now. In the Ivy Press dictionary, it's in there. In the Zondervan Illustrated Bible Background series, it's in there. But if you read his oldest stuff, he wasn't quite on board with it yet. But that's the dishonesty with someone like IP. He's not concerned with what these authors really believe. All he wants is to find a quote that will justify his position, and then just hope and pray that you don't know any other authors that you can reference.
Yeah, and I wish Dr. Blitz was on, because I would ask him about IP's whole theory on like the God question, because he also is very dishonest and quote mines that as well. But I mean, I appreciate the call, Justin and Ian, and again, you guys are awesome, and you guys have a great day. Okay.
Hey, yeah, thanks. I appreciate that, Frank.
Yeah, make sure you stop and worship at your like knacker table.
Hey, well, you guys take care, okay?
Yeah, you too. Cheers.
There was an old suspense horror flick I remember now called Tommy Knockers. That'll get stuck in your head too. But man, the words got ahead of me there.
That's fun. It's a silly word anyway. This was like the easiest skip of my life when I started reading about like the tabernacle, about how to construct my own fucking tabernacle at home. I was like, what? and I'm like reading, and then I go to the next page and it's still talking about the fucking tabernacle, and I'm like, the next page, it's like inescapable. They went what a yap session.
It's really weird. So we have these words in English that we just adopted from like the King James Bible. So like tabernacle, just like Lucifer in Isaiah 14, were the Latin translations. And when they translated them into English, like, man, everybody knows this specific word, and we want them to keep using that word. So when they translated English, they just left it. They're like, well, we don't want to invent a new word here. And so that's how you still have like these modern Bibles that will say Lucifer rather than the light bringer or the dawn bearer, which is what it would mean if you translate it directly into English. Lucifer is just the Latin word for light bearer.
Sure.
It's not the name of the Satan.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be really confusing, especially for these like, I don't know, like people who aren't looking at like the original text. Like if I came across that in something like, well, I mean, probably it's different because for like the NRSVUE, you're giving like a lot of credence that it's a good translation. But I mean, if I were to come across that, I would just assume that it's talking about Satan.
Yeah, because people associated that passage early on with Satan. Like they didn't understand it. The early Christians had no idea what to do with the Old Testament, which most of the earliest Christian authors just allegorized everything in the Old Testament as much as they could because they didn't care about it. They didn't want to read it literally because it conflicted with the Jesus stuff, right? But if you know anything about Isaiah and the time period in chapter 14, he's writing about the fall of the Babylonian king, possibly actually the Neo-Assyrian king, depending on how you're going to read it. And he's comparing them to a myth that they would have known in Assyria and also in Syria, and they would have known it in Babylon too, where there's this divinity named Athtar the Terrible, he's nicknamed. And Baal is on the throne on Mount Zaphon. Well, Baal goes down to the underworld to fight with Mot, the deity of death, and he gets his ass whooped, doesn't go well, and they're like, oh, we need a king. And so his mother Venus is like, hey, put Athtar on the throne, put him here. So he climbs up on the throne, and he's a laughing stock because he's not tall enough to reach the footstool. His head doesn't reach the headrest, and he's like, oh, look at this tiny little guy, he can't be a king. And he cast down in shame, right? This is what they're saying in Isaiah 14. They're making fun of the leader of Babylon with this particular known myth, comparing him to that. And so, but Christians didn't know that. They had no understanding of the ancient Near East. And so they're like, I don't know, I guess it's Satan. It must be about Satan.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like a good number of stories that this is how you know that the Bible is a work of man as opposed to like a work of God, is because there are even if you get the translations right, there are so many stories that just don't make sense, either because like the events themselves are unclear, or like like you might just have like totally different values than like maybe this story makes sense if you have like barbaric values from like 2000 years ago, but it just makes like no sense. Like for example, the like one of the first stories, the fuck, why am I blanking? It's the brothers, the Cain and Abel, that's the ones. That story makes no fucking sense to me. Like
I can
reading
explain
through
that
it.
one too.
Well,
Yeah.
like I get like how they arrive at the, it just seems like there's like so much like context that's like needed to actually understand it, because like a first pass, not knowing the context, it just comes off as like gibberish. Like it seems like God's being like a dick. But I think you explained once that it's like some long-standing conflict between like the fucking farmers and like the like animal herders.
There's two major conflicts in that story. The first one is answering the Mesopotamian idea that it was greater to build farms and cities. The Bible, a lot of them were from Judah, and they were strictly against city building. They classified cities as being full of evil and uncleanliness and whatnot. So they preferred the nomadic life. So there's 7 great disputations in ancient Mesopotamia. One of them is the farmer versus the shepherd. And so they preferred the farmer because it allows city building. And the Bible was like, nah, not the fucking shepherd. That's the guy that God wants. He's on top. But it also is a secondary commentary on Judah supplanting Israel, because Israel was there first. They're the big brother. They had 10 tribes up there. They were huge and they were older. Judah came on the scene. They eventually went from Midian into the hills of the Judean desert, like around the Bronze Age collapse, like 1170. And then they took over the place. And then when the Assyrians wiped out the northern tribes, it was just Judah left standing. They're like, oh, look at this. Turns out we're God's favorites. What do you think about that? And so there's a lot of commentaries. And there's a trope going through the Old Testament, because the Judeans were the ones who assembled it, of like, hey, do you see all these older brothers? They keep getting replaced by the younger brother. What's going on there? And that's what we find in Cain and Abel as well.
I like how, you know, there's, it's like a cultural equivalent. Like today we argue like who would win, like 100 men or like one gorilla, but back then it's like the equivalent to that was like, what's better, you know, to be like a city slicker or to be like a rural nomad? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like imagine like writing up like new mythology that's based on that. You know, there's just like your introductory story, and it's like, yeah, then 100 men get together and get like torn to shreds by this gorilla. And then it's just like a confusing story for people who don't know like the cultural context.
It's pretty wild. And that's the biggest problem with the Bible is, in order to understand it, God literally expects normal people to learn Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic, and then also learn all of the ancient history. It's not realistic. That's not what's going to happen. And you can't trust your pastor. Like 50% of pastors in America have no biblical education, which is crazy to think about. It's wild that the majority of pastors, almost the majority of pastors now, have no Bible college, no seminary training. It's baffling to me that we even allow it. But then it would be, we'd be invoking, or we'd be violating the freedom of religion clause if we demanded that they get an education.
Well, I think that just like speaks to like the utter incoherency of Protestantism. I think that's like, you know, add that to a reason for why you should think like Protestantism is like obviously false. You know, I don't know. I just think that any model where like, okay, I don't know, just like there's like a huge like problem of like discernment. Like you're the one who's discerning like the true church based on like what your vibes, the fucking Holy Spirit. Like,
yeah.
Why is the Holy Spirit leading so many people in different directions?
Right, it's pretty wild too. It even on the, you know, the conflict. By the way, theists, there's still time to call in. The number is 720-619-2288, and there's a web link you can use in the description as well. Don't let the atheists win. It's been nothing but atheists calling today. I can only assume that the Christians can't contend. Nevertheless, what was I just about to say? I forgot now. What were you saying?
Protestantism is incoherent.
Yeah.
Discernment, Holy Spirit leads people in different directions. I was saying something. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, there was an explanation for this. Paul, the disagreement you've mentioned before, we've all talked about the difference between Paul and Jesus in terms of following the law. Some of the early apologists, like Origen, their answer was wild. They include the Holy Spirit. They're like, well, Jesus, this was his teaching, but people weren't ready to hear that the law was done away with. They weren't ready for that. So the Holy Spirit gave them new instructions after Jesus died. I'm like it's like 20 years later? That's all it took was 20 years? Like, what do you mean they weren't ready for it? It's baffling to me.
Yeah. Holy Spirit came by, said you can keep your foreskin.
yeah, true. Could you imagine, though, all these people wanting to convert and they're like, don't make me cut the foreskin. And then you get word, hey, you don't have to cut it. Oh, here's some money, y'all. Let's do this thing.
Yeah, you'd be fucking celebrating. It'd be the best day of your life when you find out. Could you imagine being one of the losers that already did it? And then the Holy Spirit comes by and he's like, just kidding. You know, you don't need to, it was just a prank.
Dude's like in his bathroom, like already just cut it off, bleeding all over the place. And someone walks in, don't do it. Oh no.
God.
Well, before I believe in Joshua, before they enter the promised land, that generation, for some reason, even though they were the holy generation, didn't get circumcised while they were in the desert. So there's a mass circumcision of like 1 million people right before they enter. And this is mounds and mounds of foreskins everywhere. It's crazy. They didn't think that one through.
Yeah, holy shit. I don't know, can you imagine? Like, what's also crazy to me, I mean, like, clearly, like, at that time, if you were getting, like, circumcised as an adult, like, that to me is, like, that's unbelievable, frankly. But there are, like, cultures today where the age of circumcision is, like, 13. That's, like, truly, like, I actually don't even know what to do with that. Like, that's so unbelievable to me. What a horrific amount of pain.
Yeah, it's got to be terrible. My grandfather didn't get circumcised until he was 18 because for some reason when he went to the military it was required. It was a long time ago. And so he got circumcised at age 18 and he said it was the most horrific, painful experience he's ever endured. And this is a guy who like went to war. So yeah. I mean, it's pretty bad.
Yeah. I mean, did they do like anesthetic?
No, he didn't. No, because in the military, just get out of here. Get out of here. There's assembly line. If you need circumcised.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, people talk about that in the military, where you get like when you're getting like your like injections. You know, it's like fucking like 1, 2, 3, and they're all like agonizingly painful.
Right.
And then you're good to go.
Well, we do have a theist in queue, Dave from Illinois. So let's get Dave in here and maybe have a substantial conversation. Dave, welcome in. You're on the Hang Up with Justin and Ian. How are you?
Hey, guys. Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah,
sure thing.
Thanks.
What's on your mind?
Perfect. No, I was listening earlier. I just came across your guys' channel on YouTube, The Line, over the weekend. I forgot the gentleman I'd spoken with earlier because I called in, I think it was this last Saturday or Sunday, but I find it very, very interesting trying to get to know more about, not necessarily atheism, but more about why maybe you guys are towards Christianity and all that, but to, I guess, kind of get me to maybe see, like, am I believing in the wrong thing versus, you guys doing it? So, I wanted to get more into, obviously, the crux of, being an atheist, but also, like, I think you had said earlier about, 1 Peter 3:15, and I'm not a total Bible guy at nowhere near level. I'm Catholic, which barely is, trying to read his Bible almost every other day, but about like how I should present them, right? Why I should say, like with how did Peter say, like you should be ready to emphasize and explain your faith and all that to other people to try to get them to become like Christian or Catholic or something like that.
That's the general idea, yeah. Paul's understanding, and this was what Luther adopted. He took this from Paul as well, which is that everybody is, if you're a Christian, you're a priesthood to the nations. So every individual that is in Jesus Christ should also be trying to reap a harvest. You're co-laborers with Christ.
Okay, so try to get you guys what to believe, why I believe in that then, right?
That's the general idea, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, would it be cool if I could tell you why I believe that? And then maybe, I don't know specifically if you guys are strictly atheists and whatnot. I don't know much about it, but I could explain that to you, and then you guys can give me why you guys believe in that also.
Yeah, sure. We would love to hear like what like justification you have for thinking that Christianity is true. Yeah, what makes you think that it's true?
Perfect. So, what I believe in as far as being, Catholic and Jesus and the Trinity and all of that is not only do I believe in a certain way, being it that it's your own personal experience that you have to believe in, but that's what I believe most, if not all, true Christians have to come to believe in themselves. Be it that they have to go through a certain experience, a certain thing that kind of pushes the ball into the net, so to speak, for them, because it comes to a point where, I went to a Catholic school since I guess I was in 8th grade, I think I want to say or so, and, going to mass and pretty much doing that every other Friday and not really knowing as a kid and not putting attention to religion, kind of brushed it off. But we went along with it because that's what, parents did, and got to do your first
It's part of the
communion,
culture.
first confession, all that stuff. So I really just kind of was following the steps as far as what this was supposed to be, compared to like almost anything else, like playing a sport or doing whatever it is for a club or team or anything like that. That it really didn't open my eyes till later. Well, what is faith really about? And it wasn't until maybe my early 20s that I was like, okay, what is this about? Where people have to put in that effort to learn more about, what does the Bible really teach? What is it that the message is about? And it was slowly coming to that with small instances. Well, in my childhood, this went good, this went bad. Maybe was that Jesus? Was that my guardian angel, whatever? And honestly, it wasn't until, personally recently that going through an experience where I literally felt the presence of, Jesus, God in prayer, that I was like, this is something that is touching me in a way that nothing ever has before. Mm-hmm. And it put me in the position of saying, this has to be real, because I have never had felt that before. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm trying to kind of convey to you guys. It takes the person to go through that, especially like those who might be doubtful or trying to learn about it, to be like, okay, there's got to be something here, because I'm doing something and experiencing something I never have before. And that's how I feel that people who believe in Jesus, who believe in the Trinity, who, believe in the Word and all that stuff, would be the difference maker of sure. Why it is they believe in it versus, what I'm hoping to get your explanation on why I shouldn't believe that, why atheism would be more of the way to go.
Yeah, so I have a lot to say about that. I think that this runs very heavily into something called the problem of divine hiddenness, which is just that if the ultimate good for us is a relationship with God, then we should just all know that God exists, because that's required to have a relationship with God. Let me break this down. You're saying that the one and only way that you could possibly find God is if he gives you a personal experience. But one of the things that God wants, one of the things that is God's personal goal, is to get as many people into heaven as possible. That's what God wants. He desires for us to be with him in heaven, engaging in the beatific vision, as opposed to eternal conscious torment, which the Catholic Church is committed to for some reason. But that's a huge problem, right? So if something is necessary to achieve your goal, then you ought do it. Otherwise, you're being irrational. If my goal was to graduate from college and I need to go to my classes to do that, but I don't go to my classes, then I'm just being irrational. Like I'm not acting on my goal. So okay, God has this goal. He wants all of us to convert, but in order for us to convert, I would need to know that he exists. And the only way for that to happen is if I have the experience of him. So God giving me an experience of him is necessary for me to convert to Christianity. And then he's just not doing that. So there's this thing that God ought be doing if he wants to achieve his goal, giving me a personal experience. And he's simply not doing that. So he's not doing what he ought do. That means that he can't possibly be all good or perfectly rational. I give you a bit to work with there. I don't know. What do you make of that?
No, you gave me a ton. No, I appreciate that. So what I'm getting to kind of understanding is that you personally believe that, you think people have to come to a certain experience because God wants as many people, obviously, to be into heaven. And if I have to go through that experience just to be with God, then that's kind of pretty hard to accomplish. And
no.
Forget
Just
you to
that
believe that you should be allowed into heaven and all that.
No.
Kind of
Just that.
on par.
No. It's kind of close, but not. The core part is that God has an obligation to give everyone a personal experience because that's in line. In order for God to achieve the goal that he has of getting as many people as he can into heaven, he needs to give everyone a personal experience because otherwise we won't believe in him. And if we don't believe in him, we won't go to heaven. In order for God to achieve his goal of getting us to heaven, we need to believe in him. In order for us to believe in him, he needs to give us a personal experience. So the fact that he's not doing that means that he can't possibly
That's
exist.
the key to get in there, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
To go through that personal experience, kind of like
if this is required to come to know God, then we should just expect everybody to have a personal experience, if that makes any sense.
Okay. No, I get that. I understand that. What I would counter with that is saying that obviously every person is unique. Every person is going to have their beliefs. Every person is going to think one way versus another, especially towards something they might know about, or maybe even like me earlier, thinking they know a lot about something when they pretty much know nothing about it. What I believe is that God gives us all that, again, this free will, quote unquote, which, I think it's kind of thrown around in a lot of positive and negative ways. And it's a whole nother, I'm sure, topic that you guys have done plenty of shows about and can get into, but that free will at the end of the day is what I believe God's saying. Look, if I need to give you a personal experience, then that's going to be for up to you to accept, because we can still ignore those signs. We can still say, well, this is, not because God wanted it. This is me just having a lucky day, or me, unfortunately getting into an accident, having an unlucky day. To me,
he does
I believe
that
it's up to the person to get to that experience, whether they want to get that, to accept it or not. If God's putting out those signals, if it's something that you might not even know, you might not be aware of it, but it's for us as humans that he gave us that will to say, go ahead, deny me. You have that ability. I am not going to force you to follow me. I want you. I love you. I want you to be with me. End of day, that's what I want. But I can only do as much as you allow me to give you. And some people I feel are very neglectful towards like, nope, I do want to know. I need to know facts, science, and truth versus, faith, belief, which are totally different things at the end of the day.
But doesn't God know that I'm not going to interpret these things as personal experiences? Shouldn't God be giving me a personal experience that he knows I'm going to be able to recognize as a personal experience? Because I've seen nothing throughout my entire life that I personally recognize to be a personal experience. I don't know, like a good analogy. Let's say that there's like a person who's going to torture you forever unless you sit down and have coffee with them once a month. But you don't know that you don't even know that they exist because they like hide out deep in the mountains.
Call my parents.
Yeah, although I would hope that you know that your parents exist, but
No, I'm just saying.
If this is what the person wants,
time, talk to
you're
mom
good.
once
You're
a
good.
week or something like that. But no, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah,
like
no,
that,
no,
man.
you're
I get
good.
what
You're
you're
good.
saying.
Yeah, we would expect this person, if this is what they want, is like the coffee every week. we would just expect the person to reveal themselves to you. And if what they're doing is like sending like cryptic like cipher letters that they know you won't be able to decode, then sorry, deeply inappropriate soundboard moment, Justin.
I
Wow.
deeply apologize.
No, all good. I was like, is that
I was
Fiddler on the
moving
Roof?
something and it went right into my soundboard.
Oh my God.
No, no
That's
worries.
tiniest
You're-
violins
you're
for me
fine.
now.
Oh,
In fact,
this guy.
yeah, you're fine. I can hear you well. You're good.
Yeah. But okay, so what was the point that I just made? It was about hiddenness, but specifically God. Yeah. God is like sending out signals, and he's all knowing, so he knows that I'm not going to see these things as like actually being personal experiences. That's very strange. It seems like God should be giving me the personal experiences that I will recognize as personal experiences.
No, I totally get that. And I mean, wouldn't you agree that going through certain experience, like you might not even know it is and might overlook it versus like I'm trying to look for something right now, like what, hear my prayers, God, hear this. It's something that I truly believe that you can only come to yourself as a person. We're given all these different things to, read and say God is real in the Bible and Jesus and the New Testament, you should follow that. That I feel is what kind of Jesus came to do in the first place and say, here is what I believe the first church is going to be. Here are what the rules are going to be. That's going to be one thing. The other thing is getting the, sheep together to the flock to follow you. So you got that choice to even start going in that direction before just saying, nope, this is going to be wrong. This is something that I just can't believe in. And I believe God says, look, I'm not going to intervene that way. I'm going to put, Satan down there. He's going to give you guys these temptations, these evil things that you might not believe in because they're good or bad, but he's going to be there because that's how it is.
James says
And
that temption comes from your heart.
You have to make your own choice on what you want to do. Here's my good
Dave,
book.
did you hear
Follow
that?
it. Don't follow it. Go that way.
Dave, did
Go
you hear
ahead.
what I said? The book
I'm
of James
sorry,
says that the temptation's already in your heart. Same with Paul in Romans chapter 7.
Correct, yes. And we're all born with
So
it.
we don't need Satan. Why would God put Satan here? He says in 2 Corinthians 4:4 that Satan blinds the eyes of people so that they won't believe. Wow, that's super counterproductive to God's mission. Why would he do that?
Well, because, like I always even tell, some friends, like, oh, really, you don't believe heaven and hell? You believe in this? No, but this is earth. This isn't paradise. This isn't heaven. We're here.
No, I'm not asking about that. I'm asking about Satan, right? So what you're suggesting is God can't intervene on like people's free will and give you what you need to become a Christian.
He chooses not to.
But he will choose to send somebody on his behalf to make you do the opposite of that. His name is Satan.
Yes. Well, obviously.
That sounds like interference.
Yeah, that's interference. Satan is doing the interference for Yahweh.
Well, again, and I go with the whole free will thing, which again is like, oh, you guys got free will, but don't we have the choice to do something bad versus something good?
I don't see how you could if God's all knowing. I mean, if God already knows.
Reading our book.
Oh, it was a rhetorical question. I don't see how it could be if God's all knowing. If God already knows exactly what you're going to do, it's not like you can do something other than what God knows you're going to do. So it doesn't seem like you have free will. It seems like the thing that you're going to do is necessarily what you're going to do. And there's no possible world where you do something other than what God knows that you're going to do. So there's only one thing that God immutably, timelessly, unchangingly knows that you're going to do, and then you do it.
Yeah, and I completely get that. I understand that. But to put myself kind of on that level, there's nowhere near I can possibly start to comprehend what God's plan is for me, for us, or why he puts me in a certain prediction. All I know is he already knows, yes, the outcome of stuff, but it's up for me to either follow through with it or not. At the end of the day, again, I know the whole free will part.
Do you have the ability
to
not?
Words that get into the crux of it really is so hard to be like, well, it's this, it's that. I'm just saying we have that choice to deny him or not. He puts Satan
if God knows that you're going to deny him, If God knows that you're going to deny him, is it possible that you don't deny him?
Well, yes, it's like a catch-22 then, wouldn't it be?
Well, it seems like it seems like you can't possibly not deny him if God knows that you're going to deny him, because otherwise God would know a false thing, and that can't be.
What I'm saying is I can't possibly fathom what I believe to be the almighty creator of God to think or do or feel at all. If that's what you think, that he's doing this just because it serves no reason, I don't know what God's plan is for.
I'm not asking what his plan is. I'm asking if you can do something other than what God knows that you're going to do.
No, not at all. He's, to me,
sure. Then there's no free will.
He knows, the outcome.
Yeah, then there's no free will, right? There's only one thing that can happen, so there's no free will.
But I have the free will to follow him or not. He's the only
you would
one who
need
knows
choices for that to be the case. Yeah, no, I know, but there would need to be like options, and there aren't. There aren't genuine options there. There's only like God knows you're going to do something, and you can't choose to do something other than that thing.
No, I'm saying we don't know. God knows.
I know. That's fine. But God knows, and you can't do otherwise.
Line in the sand. That's the only kind of thing where I'm saying is to put God in saying you got to do this and he knows everything and all that. Okay, that's sure. I get it. But I can't possibly think what God's plan is, if that's what he wants or not. I'd love to believe it.
I didn't say anything that it was even remotely related to that. I don't even know what I'm like super confused. That is responsive, but
that's kind of what I was going to. God is something that just boggles your mind about what that plan is. As much as we want to think he's good, all powerful, all knowing, well, he's also everything. To me, he's good, bad, evil, all that at the same time. He's in time itself right now, and he's in eternity forever. It's something that our human mind can't comprehend.
Okay, well, you've kind of taken like the carefully constructed theology that you were putting forward just now, and you incinerated all of it with a flamethrower. You just affirmed like a ton of contradictions. That just can't be. It just can't be the case that God is like God can't both be like timeless and in time. He can't both be all good and also evil. That just can't be, right? Those are contradictions.
Isn't that a contradiction then? If God cannot be, how then can God be? God is God.
He can't. That's the point, right? He can't be.
That. We can't understand the plan.
No. It's not like, oh, what a puzzle. How are we going to reconcile the fact that God both exists and doesn't exist? No. If God both exists and doesn't exist, then he just doesn't exist. That's a contradiction.
And wouldn't that in itself be a definition of God, something we can possibly not even understand or begin to? It's like the ant farm colony looking up at you opening up their shades every day. They have no idea. I'm not calling ourselves, little insects or ants, but we have no idea about that stuff. And that's kind of where I'm coming on when it comes to the level of God and all that. And I don't want to steer from, all that and stuff.
Dave, I'm confused that you're talking about what God would or wouldn't do, and now you're telling me this we can't understand his plans. Like, we can't understand God. I feel like you've created a contradiction here.
What I'm trying to let me just say this. So we can't possibly, I believe, we as human beings cannot possibly begin to understand what God's plan is, what it might be, what we could even start to think remotely what it is.
But that means when you said that God wouldn't violate our free will, that means that statement's false. You have no way to validate that because you can't understand God.
Well, wouldn't that be true also because I don't understand God then?
And no, your statement would be false. You're saying you know what God would or wouldn't do, in the same breath also saying that you can't understand God.
I guess what I'm trying to get to say is God would be the, Omega and the Alpha, the beginning, the end, the thing that we can't even possibly begin to understand. That's
except for all the ways in which we
God
understand him.
is.
Yeah.
Now, where I think
you think maybe the Bible could describe him?
Obviously get into is about how Jesus, the human version, is saying this is good, this is bad, this is laws of Moses versus
Is the
you know,
biblical
Ten
description
Commandments
of God
versus everything else,
accurate?
then
Is the biblical description of God accurate?
I believe it's as accurate for a human being to describe.
When it makes statements, are they true?
I would have to believe yes, because it says divine. The Bible's written by
Okay.
by divinity.
So when God talks about what he will and won't do, then that means we know some things about God, right?
Well, yes, but we can't understand his meanings behind him doing it.
No one asked about that, although he does tell you his reason. So what that means is by reading the Bible, there are some things we can know about God, which is where this conversation started with, right? In the Bible, God does appear to people. God does specifically move people in one direction or the other. It specifically gives them experiences. It depends. In Romans 8 and Romans 9, he predestines people to go to heaven or hell. It's also in Ephesians chapter 1 as well. So what that means is there's no biblical reason why God shouldn't give Ian and I a personal experience that would be convincing to us.
Yes, very well so, that means. But you would have to recognize it yourselves, right?
Recognize what? Yeah. So what? That wouldn't be hard.
That
You
was
think
an
God
experience
is
or
like
possible
incapable of
experience for you
proving that
to-
it's himself?
No, he thinks
It
that we're
would-
not searching, is his
for you to
argument.
interpret, though.
Yeah.
Dave, I was a Christian for 20 years. What do you mean I wasn't searching?
Well, I didn't
Isn't
have
it
a signal
strange
searching.
that
I'm
there are
saying
like
for
all
you to
these
recognize what sign is a
Like,
sign. That's for you.
all of a
to
sudden they become
interpret. That's
mind
for you to
readers.
believe.
Wouldn't
Like, well,
Justin
why-
recognize like one of the signs like while he was, I don't know, like wouldn't God be like like sending out signs
wouldn't
while
that be
Justin
for
was a
you to
believer? Why
recognize?
didn't Justin pick up on any of those?
Well, because it would be for you to interpret and recognize on your own. I have no idea what you would be looking for, what you could believe in that would make you believe in God or leave
Well,
the church. What I'm
I
saying
don't
is
know
be
it
what
tempted-
to look
depended on
for.
that person.
Yeah, I could be tempted to believe in a God, but I would never be tempted to believe in the biblical God because Jesus is a liar and a fraud. He is absolutely 100% not the Messiah, and all you have to do is read the Old Testament to find out.
Well, the Old Testament is basically the Jewish Tanakh, right?
Well, yeah, but that's how you know who the Messiah is. It tells you.
Correct. So
that means Christianity is
then,
false if
literally
he's not
back
the
then,
Messiah.
The Israelites, the Jewish, were all focused on this. They were the chosen people. That's why God chose them to be spared, to not have certain slaves and all that stuff, because that was what literally even Jesus Christ was Jewish. That's the Old Testament. But just like,
So what?
I mean, you guys could agree we have a constitution.
That doesn't address
it
my-
can be amended. Things can change.
That doesn't address
Cannot
my claim.
The Old Testament change to a new covenant, to the New Testament?
Nope. No, God says that my word will come true. In fact, he says specifically that's how you know who a false prophet is in Deuteronomy 18. If they predict something from Yahweh and it doesn't come true, you get to kill them.
And Jesus said he's come here to fulfill the prophecies, to say that.
But he didn't.
Come to
And then
fulfill
they
the
killed
laws of
him.
Moses as well.
Yeah, and then they killed him. He was a false
Change those
prophet
things.
predicted in Deuteronomy 13.
No, but he said he is the prophet. He is the Messiah.
Yeah,
That's
of course he's going to
that's what
say
I'm
it, but
saying,
he's a
where we
liar
break in
because he's not the
belief then.
Messiah.
Well, that's you're
Why would
believing
I?
that
Why
he
would I
did get
think
the
that
sign.
Jesus is the
I'm saying he
Messiah?
came to fulfill those prophecies.
But he didn't fulfill one, not even one.
Not even one. He did.
Not even one.
What was under Daniel the one where he said he was come to fill for the sin of man to die?
That's not. It's not in Daniel. And there's no prophecy about that
I
either.
apologize, and it might be like I said. I'm barely getting into trying to study a passage a day and everything. What I'm trying to get to you, gentlemen, is to say that certain people can believe that he was the Messiah. He was not.
Why?
But that doesn't change
He's
the
not.
fact that the message.
Why would we think that he
changed,
is?
The message grew, and it changed for him to not just be the Messiah for the chosen people. It was for everyone.
But if Jesus isn't the Messiah, I don't care what he has to say. I don't care about any of these changes.
Okay, then I don't understand your point there. How many other major religions
My point
have a
is
Messiah
God
that's like
set
Jesus?
the criteria for the Messiah, and he says, my promises will not come back void. That means that when he tells you who the Messiah is going to be and what he's going to do, he means it. or else he's a liar.
Of course. No, that means I believe in what he said. You don't.
No,
That's what
I
I'm
can
saying. That's the
literally
only
believe
difference.
in the Hebrew Bible God and still know that Christianity is not true. That's not even related to atheism.
Well, again, how can you prove something that you don't believe in?
It doesn't matter if you believe it. You just got to read the book.
And okay, so this is kind of maybe I'm not trying to pivot or change anything here, but I wanted to know more about that atheism, about how what I've only known as atheism is.
We'd love to. I'm sorry to interrupt, Dave, but we would love to do that, but we got to finish the first one, right? I asked,
okay,
what would be a reason?
No, go ahead. That's
even one reason, just one, to believe that Jesus was the Messiah that the God of the Hebrew Bible was talking about.
To believe in him, you have to follow him. Correct?
No.
The only way through heaven is
the
Jesus.
opposite. In order to follow him, you would first need to believe in him.
Well, then to follow him, wouldn't you have to learn him, study him, believe in his word then?
You'd have to study the word that came before him.
Well, that's what he did. But he said, I'm here to fulfill the new covenant, the New Testament, my new deal with humans.
He didn't fulfill the new covenant.
The Gospels, it's the four Gospels. It's with him.
Jeremiah, they're lies. Jeremiah 31 says when the new covenant is achieved, that everybody will know God, from the youngest to the oldest, from the least to the greatest. Nobody will again say, know the Lord, for they'll all know him. That's not true.
Well, for those who accept him, of course they will. For those who don't, it's
Didn't
not
say
true.
Doesn't say for them who accept him. It says all people.
Well, again, how can all people know something if they never even hear of Jesus, right?
Exactly. That's the point. That's why he's not the Messiah. Because the Messiah is not going to be somebody that you have to figure out. Everyone's going to know it. If that Messiah from the Hebrew Bible shows up, nobody's going to be questioning whether or not he's the Messiah.
Then do you believe there's no Messiah that has ever come, or that there will be a Messiah coming?
There has never been one, and there will never be one.
Okay, so you just completely deny the chance of there being a Messiah at all.
Well, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in the Hebrew Bible.
Believe that.
I don't believe in the Hebrew Bible because the God of the Hebrew Bible absolutely makes dozens and dozens of false promises in Ezekiel 12. He promises that all the prophecies given to Ezekiel are going to happen in that generation, and then they didn't. This God has no idea what he's doing. This is a God written and invented by men.
Again, I mean, I am not at all trying to argue a narrative saying God doesn't exist for you, but he does for me. And what I'm trying to persuade you on, that there's a small chance that there could be that chance of being a God, that Jesus is real, that there's a reason to believe in him.
Do you think contradictions can be true?
Only if you're God, right? But no, obviously a true is a true, a false is a false.
So, wait. To be clear, when you say only if you're God, are you joking or is that serious?
No, guys, what I'm trying to say is we can never understand God. You guys are trying to put like a label on him saying, if this God can do this God, we have a mind that cannot comprehend God. It's trying to understand to me like, you know, the black holes past the event horizon times a million. We'll never know that. God knows if we ever will. That's the kind of level of entity I believe my God to be.
That's what you're saying to us is that God isn't. You're essentially telling us that God isn't God. That God doesn't even have an identity that's consistent. That God is an inconsistent God. You're saying contradictory things about him. You can't be consistently contradictory. Well, you can know that contradictions are false, even when applied to God.
Well,
you know,
I'm saying as a human,
do you agree? Wait, so would you say God's outside of? Would you say God's outside of logic?
Of course, God is literally everywhere. Behind
so
our
then,
own
so
knowledge,
then God's
behind
illogical.
what we know I can't explain God, guys. I'm not God.
But wait, would you say God is illogical? Is your belief in God illogical?
No, my belief in God is that he's both. My belief is that we
Of
cannot
course,
comprehend
yeah, he's
him.
both logical
That's
and
what I'm
illogical. What are you talking about, Dave?
I'm saying Jesus Christ is logical because he was human and came here. I can say that. As far as the Father God, guys, you want me to explain God? Like, I mean,
If you,
let
Dave,
me
if you,
explain
we're
to
not
you
asking
how,
you. Wait, we are.
again, a
Whoa,
black hole works.
that's false. That's just not true. We are not asking you. I don't think we've asked you for an explanation for why God does what he does. I think you're confused about this. You keep on saying
Well,
that
you do with
we're
the
asking you
signs.
to explain why God does what he does, or you're asking us to explain God's plan. Nobody has asked you for that. We are not asking you for that. We understand that that would be an insane burden. Whether or not God exists does not depend on whether or not you can explain every single thing that he's ever done. He just needs to not be like contradictory. And if he is contradictory, then
I'm
that's
not trying to be.
illogical. So, okay, wait, here's a question. If we were able to demonstrate to you that Jesus didn't fulfill a single prophecy from the Old Testament, would you think that that would mean that Jesus isn't actually God?
Well, like you guys have already come to your conclusion saying God doesn't exist, he never exists, or anything like that. I kind of would have to go that same route with Jesus. So no matter what proof you give
that doesn't
me,
answer the
I
question,
have to
Dave.
counter with the same reasoning you guys gave me.
Dave, that didn't answer the
I
question.
believe
Did
in
you hear
Jesus
what he
because
said?
of what I do. You guys
Is that,
don't, no matter
it
what.
sounds like a yes? Like, or is it, well, it sounds like.
No, it's saying nothing is going to change my mind that Jesus was the Messiah.
Okay.
Is here to save us. There's no argument. It's like
even if
you
Facts
even
don't
if he didn't
matter.
fulfill even if he didn't fulfill a single
prophecy,
prophecy, he didn't fulfill one single prophecy,
Well,
you'd
to
still
me, he
think that he's
did.
the Messiah who came to fulfill the
No, what do you mean?
prophecies?
For a religion to spark up as fast as it did, for as much as it has now, almost 30% of the population of this world, there has to be something.
Is that one of the
to it.
prophecies?
I'm not saying
So
it's
Islam is
everybody's
true?
going to believe. I'm sorry, what?
Islam's true then? It grew just as fast as
personally don't believe it to be
Christianity and
true.
is going to be overtaking
No,
Christianity soon.
Well, okay, sure. But I do not follow
so you're
Islam.
Muslim now.
I know they don't believe in Jesus Christ being the
Alhamdulillah,
Lord
bud.
and Savior. So
They do. Oh,
I'm sorry?
well, I think they do think that he's the Messiah, if I'm not mistaken. They just don't think he's God.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't think they even believe that he was crucified.
Right. They don't.
That's weird, but is that a prophecy?
They
It's not a
believe he was
prophecy.
hung.
There's
They
no
believe he was
prophecy about a Messiah getting
not the
crucified.
Messiah. I'm sorry?
There's no prophecy about Jesus or anyone getting crucified.
No, I know, but I'm saying the Islam said he was a prophet. That was about it, and they don't
And the
believe he
Messiah.
was crucified. I believe they in the Quran that he was hung. That's what I think is. But again, like I said, I don't know that religion. All I know is as much as I can, barely on what I know on mine.
Well, I mean, if no amount of evidence, if we could literally show you contradictions in the Bible and that wouldn't change your mind, then I think maybe your head is hardened against the truth. You know, maybe you have like a bad like head posture
Well, can I say the
with
same thing
respect
about
to
you,
like new.
gentlemen?
No, because if you gave me evidence, I would change my mind. If God came down to me and gave me a personal experience, I would change my mind. I would become a Christian. I would be at church this Sunday. If you gave me an argument that established that God exists, either from evidence or
that
first
is my
principles,
argument,
and I
though.
accepted all of that, then I would come to the conclusion that God exists. If you showed me a contradiction within my worldview, I would change my mind. If I showed you a contradiction within your worldview, you wouldn't change your mind at all. That's the difference.
No, what do you mean? For you to accept that, to actually see that instance, that proof, you would have to accept it. Who am I to say that you should accept this or that? You make up your own decisions.
There's no God in my room. There isn't a God in my room right now.
For you, that's okay, but I'm not saying.
Is
so
God
that
in my
means
room
just
for
because
you?
something isn't in your room, it doesn't exist then?
Specifically, that was the example that if God came down and showed himself to me, that would change my mind. If you gave me right now a contradiction within my worldview,
That's your benchmark,
and God
sure.
not existing, I would change my mind.
No, that's your benchmark, and I'm so sorry. I forgot. Was it Ian?
Yes.
Allegedly.
Ian.
Allegedly.
Yeah, Ian. No, it's an awesome name, man. Ian, I don't know, what movies you like, what food you like, or anything like that. But if I was to bring to you like a great steak dinner and say this is the best steak you'll ever have in your life, you're like, dude, I don't eat meat, I'm this and that, or I've never eaten a cow or anything like that. How do you know it's not good? If you don't even try to begin to believe in it and say, no, I got to have a really good experience. Not
but
just,
I did believe.
This good plate of food here. I got to have something blow my mind for that to be okay.
Dave, we're both former Christians. Dave, why do you keep assuming our background? We're both former Christians.
Yeah. I've eaten from the steak before.
I'm assuming that I do not know anything about you guys in your background.
Yeah.
If for you guys
don't
to
assume
accept
it.
whether that's proof or not.
You haven't given any proof.
If you don't want to, make a plate of food I made for dinner and say that's just bad because I don't eat that, then that's on you. That's fine. It doesn't mean that the food doesn't exist or doesn't taste good.
What's the proof?
The proof is for you to accept. I would.
What is the proof that we need to accept?
Experience, but I can't. Can I?
What would it look
tell
like?
You that I was personally touched
what
during
did the
a
signs
certain
look like,
prayer or
Dave?
something like that, because you're not me.
Dave, what did the signs look like? What should I be looking for?
No, it's not about. That's the thing. I do not know. I have no idea. Ian.
Me neither.
I really do not know because you are.
Then
your
you have
own
no
person.
idea
You make your own
why we
choices.
should believe then.
How do you know that there are signs in my life from God? If you don't know what I'm supposed to be looking
have
for.
you been looking for any of them?
Yeah,
Have
I
you ever
read
thought maybe something
I pretty
was
consistently
more than
read.
just coincidence?
Yeah, I pretty consistently read books about like philosophy of religion. I'm familiar with like the best arguments for God's existence, and I think they're all like really bad. Frankly, like I've evaluated the arguments. I've read like the arguments proposed by Christians, and then the responses, and then the responses to the responses. I don't know. Like I look into this stuff pretty deeply, and I'm far from convinced.
Yeah, listen, Dave. Few people have looked harder at the God concept than most of us out here debating the God concept. Most of us are believing in God at one point and changed our minds because of the evidence. I changed my mind. I was a dedicated Christian. I was a pastor for a decade. I changed my mind because of the evidence. If there's new evidence that proves this position wrong, I'll change my position. But there must be evidence. It can't just be what you feel.
So then you had a personal experience that led for you leaving the church versus me believing in it.
No, I studied the supposed evidence and it wasn't good evidence.
Nope, it's not real then.
It wasn't a personal experience. I just studied that. It was studying the evidence, and the evidence is contradictory, bad.
But you were led to believe it's real, right?
Yeah. That's why I would believe it.
You brought yourself to say, no, this isn't because of your own standards, your benchmark. And that's where you left the church, where I would
not
say
my
it probably
standards.
failed you because you lost your faith in it.
The church didn't fail me. I was the pastor.
Well, if you left, how did it not fail you?
I didn't leave because of the church. I left because the Bible is wrong, false. Christianity is not true.
Then something failed along the way to keep you.
Jesus failed.
Yeah.
Because he's dead now. He's
so there,
6 feet under. He's worm food. He doesn't exist. He failed you too. He said he was coming back within the lifetime of his disciples, and he didn't. He's a liar and a fraud.
Words in my mouth like that. I mean, you're allowed your opinion. Obviously, I'm allowed mine. But now, may I ask that, like, simple atheist question for you?
I guess.
But, we can do one more. We're over
I have no ill will. I am learning so much.
We're over our end time right now, so we have to make it quick.
Okay, perfect. I'll just give you the 10 seconds here. So atheism, I do not know much about it. I have no real idea other than you guys don't believe in God, obviously, but you guys believe that after our brain stops sending, electrical signals, our heart stops pumping blood, boom, worm food. Is that more or less right?
More or less. Yeah.
There's nothing after.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to the same place Jesus went to.
Okay, so why do we spend so much time wasting away the precious seconds you have on Earth? Because
Who's we?
according to you, your worm food, it's like you never existed then.
Who's wasting their
I
time?
choose to believe in something
Yeah.
that's better than that.
I'm not
Who's
wasting
wasting
my
their
time.
time?
And sometimes like the truth, like reality is like difficult to accept, you know. The fact that you have a finite life and that it's, you know, like ticking away from you
Yeah.
is difficult. That's like a huge challenge throughout all of human history, something that we've struggled to accept. But the fact that it's hard to accept or that it's
Well,
scary
wouldn't it
is
then be
no
wasting your
evidence at
time
all for
right
the
now?
idea that it's not true. No, I think this isn't a
What
waste of time.
legacy do you
I
leave
think this is a
behind? It's
great use of my
like,
time. I'm spending time with my good friend Justin. I'm talking to people about
but
metaphysics,
you'll
like my
never
favorite
know that.
topic in the world.
Yeah. Ian
It's the tree falling
single-handedly
in the
got me
woods. Can
interested
anyone
in
hear it?
not physics and philosophy. I had zero interest in philosophy since I was in Bible college. Ian is the
Okay,
one
but I'm
who
talking
brought
about
me
your
into
belief
philosophy.
in real life, being worm food. That's it.
Yeah,
That
what
is
about it?
What is the
Yeah, so
point
what?
of everything
Yeah, that's
then
it.
if we have no legacy or no we existed?
I don't
Wait.
live for death.
Yeah.
I live for life. That's the
Yeah.
difference between us.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to show you guys why I believe there's something more. I try to get maybe even a little kernel. You guys maybe think there could be something more. Because what the heck is the point? If it's we've never existed, it's not like you ever talk to your friend and all of that. It means nothing.
Dave, let me
then.
ask you a question. All right. If you're watching a really good movie and you know that the movie is going to end, are you just going to stop watching it?
No, of course not. But I'll know.
Of course not. You're having a good time. You're watching the movie, and so am I. I'm in a movie right now. I know it's going to end one day, but it's not going to end fucking today. So I'm going to enjoy it.
And it hurts me so much. Not in no negative way that this is like why I feel not bad or anything like that. Like we've come to this point as human beings that we can't believe that there might be something else. Like then we're doing.
I'm certainly
all for
open to
nothing.
it. I'm certainly open to the
And
evidence,
that's,
you know.
that's all I ask.
I'm always open to the evidence.
You know, the whole bashing and all in Jesus, I'm not going to lie, it really upsets me, but like I said, it's been a hard road, whatever. You guys are really good at what you're doing. You have more than enough opened my eyes to a lot of other stuff. I'm just hoping you'll give me the same type of like, okay, hit a little bit of a point, whatever.
If you presented even a single piece of evidence,
might suck or Jesus sucks. If you give me just that, I feel like I've done at least my
Dave,
job today.
Dave, if you gave us, I might give you that. If you gave us even a single piece of evidence, you said, basically you didn't have evidence. You said that the evidence is in front of you and that you need to stop hardening your heart towards the evidence. Like you didn't give us evidence. You gave us like a command. That's not evidence.
Well, Ian, because it's called faith. It's faith. It's not the
Do you think
not
faith,
evidence?
for you to believe in.
Do you think faith gives justification for your belief?
No, faith gives justification.
Then your beliefs are.
for you
Then your
to
belief in God is
believe
unjustified.
Whatever you want to believe in.
Yeah. So
Whatever
then
you
your
wanna
belief
believe
in
in.
God is unjustified because faith doesn't give justification for belief.
No, that's the complete opposite. So, and again,
So faith does give
circling,
justification
the
for
whole
belief?
Thing here, God, we can't understand and all that. Guys, no,
Wait,
I
sorry,
truly
wait. I'm not asking
appreciate
about
it.
God. I'm asking about faith. Wait. Does faith give justification for
shoot.
belief?
Can I give a justification for belief?
No.
As far as-
Does having faith that something is true give you a justification for thinking that it's true?
Well, of course, because you believe it's true.
So if I had faith that my neighbors are like androids or like, I don't know, Jeffrey Epstein reincarnated into like multiple people, would I be justified in going over there and like shooting all of them?
Well, of course not.
Oh yeah, it's because faith doesn't give justification.
Law. I mean, you're trying to really push the bar over here with faith and all that. I'm saying faith as far as worth of believing in the Bible or the Quran or whatever it is.
So it sounds like faith doesn't give justification for belief.
That's all I'm saying. Pardon me?
Oh, what Ian said, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like faith doesn't give justification
I'm so sorry,
for
guys.
belief.
I spoke over you. I think I'm on a delay. I couldn't hear.
No, you're
ahead.
totally fine. You're totally fine. So, okay, it sounds like faith doesn't give justification for belief. If me having faith that my neighbors are like Jeffrey Epstein reincarnated wouldn't make me justified in going over there and like killing them or whatever. If I have faith that that would be the right thing to do given the circumstance and that is the circumstance. I mean, do you think that I'd be justified in believing that my neighbor is Jeffrey Epstein reincarnated, even if I'm not justified in going over there and doing the action? Would I be justified in the belief?
Well, obviously not according to our law. According to what you believe, I don't know. Faith is what you put it in. It's not right.
You think that I
would
could
not
be
think you
justified
going
in my
over there at
belief that my
all.
neighbor is Jeffrey Epstein reincarnated?
That's for you to believe. There's no way you should go do that based on my own personal opinion. Whether you believe that's real or not, that's on you.
Okay,
I
if
pray
you don't
make the
think that's
right
absurd,
choice
I'm not
and
really sure what
break
to
any
say.
laws that govern us. But
Dave,
again,
if I have
how am I
faith,
going to explain faith to a crazy person? That's
if I have faith that you're
like,
an extraterrestrial, that you're actually the brother of Alf, would that be warranted?
I'm old enough to remember that show.
I
no,
figured you
mean,
would. It's a great
again,
show.
No, it was. It was back in the day, man. Yeah, for sure. He ate cats and stuff. So think about that. Think about the writers, what the hell they were believing in. But no. What I'm saying is,
okay.
We're
Hold on. I just
nope.
I just needed the no. I didn't need a whole sentence. I just needed the one word, which was no. The point is,
no.
Faith does not lead you to truth. It just leads you to believe in something, if at all. In fact, most people who believe in religion, they didn't choose to believe in religion. They're just convinced by it, and we're not convinced by it. You don't really get to choose what you believe in. You can choose what you follow. Like you can say, well, I believe in God, but I'm not going to follow God. You can say, I don't believe in Christianity, but I'll still go to church. You can do those things, but you can't choose what you believe. And also having faith, theoretically would be a lie. If I just said, I'm going to have faith in the Christian God today, but I don't actually believe in this God, then faith is completely useless. You must be convinced of something before faith actually happens. And faith in the Bible doesn't just mean you believe something. Faith means that you're actually believing in that thing and you're putting your trust in that thing. You can't have faith until you have belief, and we don't have belief because there's no evidence. You've not given us any evidence.
That's what I'm explaining to you guys. Faith is something that is not evidence-based. It's
That's
something
why
that
it's useless.
You believe in personally. I'm not trying
That's
to
why it's
go
useless.
round and round here.
But that is why it is useless. It's useless because it can't lead you to truth.
Well, then how much good has faith done for other people? For the person that stopped doing drugs, for the person that stopped drinking, for the person that changed their life.
For the 16-year-old girl that just
right?
ended up in an honor killing because her parents had faith in the Islamic God. Like you can't just point to some of the good things that a person of faith did and then ignore all of the bad things. What about the millions of people that were murdered by the Catholic Church from the inception all the way into the Middle Ages?
How about the just sick amounts of molestation they did?
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm saying religion is a net negative. Religion's a net negative. I don't care what good they're doing.
Horrible.
Yeah. I know. I don't care what good they're doing. They're doing terrible stuff that counteracts it.
And again, I'm just not trying to round around and do the same thing, but this is earth. It is not perfect. It is not paradise. It is not heaven. God said to me, according to me, you guys are going to have to figure it out. Whether you want to come to me or not, that's on you. Everything else, you guys fight it out. I'm going to stick this evil, thorn guy in here who's going to try to ruin everything, who's going to make stuff think this and that, but
why would he do that? That's evil.
Morally perfect, by the way.
That's
perfect
morally
God.
Depraved. Literally, it says Satan roams around like a lion looking who he can devour. And that's, God said, go get him. Go devour these people. That's horrendous. This God is vicious.
Well, the people that, again, the Israelites, the chosen people in the Old Testament, thinking that they were the chosen ones, and anyone who didn't believe that deserved to die, deserved to be wiped from the earth.
Yeah, that's what God told them to do.
God said that.
Why do you think they believed it?
Because according to them, God told them that.
Exactly. That's the problem. Once God tells you to do horrible stuff, you can't say no because it came from a God, which is why when he said that he's going to bring an army to rip pregnant women open and dash their babies' heads against stones in Isaiah 13:16, we were like, well, I guess we got to do that stuff now.
Well, couldn't any other parts of Scripture that say, better things about sparing lives for having mercy or whatever the case might be, would that be the opposite of killing, be a better thing to do too?
It wouldn't matter. If I was a great philanthropist, but I also murdered people sometimes, am I a good person?
I would believe that, but I'm no one to judge.
Okay, so
My
you
morals
probably
say
think
no,
Epstein.
but who the hell
So
am I to
Epstein
judge?
was moral. If Epstein was Christian, then he'd be moral.
No, by all accounts, by my standards of even the lowest bar, that by no means is he moral. Is he a good person? Is he anything? But I am not anyone to judge.
'Cause I'm trying to figure out how many how many sexual assaults and murders do you get to commit before you can say that the person's bad? What's the threshold?
I don't know. Tell me.
I'm asking you.
I thought it was infinity.
Well,
I thought it was infinite
But
in the
I am
Christian
not
worldview.
somebody to judge when they're dead. Guys, I am not anywhere near God, Jesus, Peter at the gates to say, this is what you did, this is what you did. I have my sins I will have to be accountable for one day that I believe in. As
What are you talking about?
I am nowhere near to judge other people. I can say, yeah, to
Dave,
me it's
but
disgusting,
you're not
depraved thing, but
Dave, you're a nice guy, but you're not tracking anything we're saying, and you keep going into things that are unrelated to the conversation.
The great Pope Francis. Who am I to judge? Who am I to judge the girl who had an abortion and now regrets it?
That has nothing to do with what we're talking about, Dave. Dave, buddy. Hey, that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about judging anyone. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I don't know why you keep bringing this up.
That's literally what you said. How do you judge them?
Well, wait.
I didn't.
I might actually ask. You know, maybe I'll ask to make a judgment, because I think having no judgment on this is also pretty wild. So who do you think is worse? Let's say right before he died, Jeffrey Epstein converted to Christianity and repented. Who'd be worse, Jeffrey Epstein or me, who has consensual but unrepentant sex with my girlfriend premarital? Which of those things is worse?
You're asking for my personal opinion, though, to judge you personally, which I'm not qualified for. So on my own personal opinion,
you don't think you're qualified to say who's better, me or Jeffrey Epstein?
That's me saying that.
Okay. Do you think God would agree with that?
You're going to heaven or hell at all.
Do you think God would agree with that assessment?
You're a way better person for what you just told me than Jeffrey Epstein. That's
easy.
How can you tell?
But I'm not one to judge Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not one
to
judge you.
You just did. Also, you should judge Jeffrey Epstein.
No, I
frankly.
said it's my own personal opinion. It doesn't mean that what I say means you're going to get into heaven or not.
Yeah.
No one asked about heaven.
So I'm asking, do you think God would agree with your assessment that like a repentant Jeffrey Epstein is worse than like an unrepentant Ian?
To me. I am no one to judge you.
He didn't hear the question.
About you, but I am not a person to judge. I'm a human being just like you are.
This conversation is getting super tedious because you're not listening, Dave.
Oh, I'm trying to, man.
Ian, ask a question again, please.
Ian or Epstein? I mean...
Wait, I just want to know, okay, wait, so do you think God would agree with the assessment? Like, who do you think God would think is worse, like me or Adolf Hitler?
Well, I would totally think that Adolf Hitler would have made more mortal and violent and the most horrible sins you can imagine.
What if he repents? Who do you think God would think is worse then?
You know, I'm sorry?
Let's say Adolf Hitler repented. Who do you think God would think is worse then?
I don't know. I'm not God.
You just judged.
I would think that if Adolf Hitler really repented and did everything, that's for him to tell Jesus, this is why I should be, let off the hook, bailed out. It's not for me to decide. I mean, good for him.
Do you understand even saying like I don't know to that is like
doesn't mean I'm forgiven.
Saying I don't know to when the question is who's worse, a repentant Adolf Hitler or me, Ian? You're not sure which one's worse, or you're not sure which one you think God thinks is worse.
In your true, actual being repent, asking for forgiveness, truly feeling bad for your sins, versus
let's say all that's true of Hitler. Let's say he like genuinely feels horrible about it and repents.
Then good, great. To me, Hitler still doesn't get off easy like that. Sorry, he's got way more on his plate. But I'm not the principal at the school that says, no, you're good, go back to class, or no, you're done. You're here till your parents come in. You're done. You're expelled. Guys, I am not.
So not all of his sins are forgiven.
I'm not going to judge anyone's sins, whoever. I hope that they do the best, but that's my opinion. At the end of the day, I can't judge you guys for what you do. I'm no one for that. I believe my God is the one who makes that judgment. That's what I'm willing to say and come forward to.
here's a good question. Let's say there's a button in front of you and pushing that button makes all cancer instantly disappear. Do you think pushing that button is the right thing to do?
I mean, I personally think it is. I would do it.
Would
I
God?
don't know if it's saving a bunch of people who deserve death row or something, but I would do that because that would be a beneficial thing for humanity.
Would God do it? Would God push that button?
You're asking me to know what God would do?
Well,
Again?
yeah. I mean, cancer exists right now, so clearly God hasn't made all cancer disappear.
Okay, but it doesn't prove that God doesn't exist then.
Well, wait, but you would agree, like, God would not push the button that makes all cancer disappear instantly, forever, right?
No, I have no idea what God would do. I would do it, yes. Maybe God wants to flood the earth again. How
Does
am I
cancer
supposed to
exist?
explain that?
I
Dave,
actually
buddy?
have. Oh gosh.
Hey, buddy, we need you to just use yes or no answers, or I don't know, because
I know,
we're
but you guys are
trying to get
yes or no
somewhere
answers for things that
in the
are not yes or no
conversation.
questions.
Can you try, Ian?
Yeah, these are. Oh gosh. Unfortunately, these like categorically are. I mean, so far it's been nothing but
Well,
yes or no
I did say
questions.
yes, I would push that
So-
theoretical button.
Yes,
I
yes,
said I
yes.
would do
So,
that. Would God
so
do
cancer
that?
exists.
I don't know.
If God had the power to make cancer disappear instantly forever, would God make cancer disappear instantly forever?
I would hope so. I do not know.
But you,
Like asking me, Ian, are you going to pick a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or, whatever for lunch tomorrow? I don't know.
okay, so
I don't know. All I know is
do
what
you-
I can know as
I
far
feel
as I can say.
stupid. I feel stupid even asking this. You'd agree that cancer exists, right? Like currently, right now, there
Yes,
is
of course.
cancer
I
in the
believe
world.
it's something that is unfortunately, killing
Yeah.
thousands of people
And God
every
is
day.
and you'd agree that God has the power to get rid of cancer, right?
I would agree that God has the power to do whatever he wants.
But you're agnostic to whether so you agree cancer exists and that God has the power to cure cancer, but you're not sure whether or not if God had the power to cure cancer, you don't know if he would do it?
No, because guys, not not even free will. Not even free will. I'm
This
going to
is
go
like
with
unbelievable.
we were banished from paradise, kicked out of paradise, the Garden of Eden. This is earth, guys. This isn't heaven. This isn't where everything is
He's
perfect.
not tracking
This
at
is
all.
where us as humans got to get kicked
Not-
out
not
and
tracking
told,
one bit,
now you
Dave.
got to wander the world and do all this all hard stuff that is not perfect. It's earth. It's not
Yeah,
paradise.
you're not even in the
For me to
ballpark,
tell you
buddy.
this is that or that, I can't
Maybe
tell
this
you.
is the guy.
I cannot
This
tell
is
you.
nothing to do with it.
Justin, maybe this is the guy, like, the law of identity conversation earlier, where the guy was like, maybe somebody could conceptualize the object that is not identical to itself. Maybe this is the guy.
Yeah, that's about right. That
you
is-
want me
that
to
is it.
explain why Earth isn't perfect?
Oh my
Why doesn't God make everything perfect then? Because this is not heaven.
That's
the
not
plain and
at all
simple
what he
answer.
said. Nope, Ian did not say that. It has nothing to do with Ian's argument.
Oh no.
All right, Dave, listen,
Well,
buddy,
that's my
it's
argument
20
for
minutes
him.
over, and we got
Nothing is
to read our
perfect
super
here.
chats, and we've had you up for an hour now. But listen, we'd love to hear from you again. We do a show every Sunday morning. You're welcome to call in and finish this conversation with us. We'd love for that to
Holy
happen
crap, an hour
on
and
the
2 minutes.
Unapologetic
Wow.
live show. But the reality is, this show is over on time, and we've got to wrap things up, buddy.
Hey, guys, I more than
Yeah.
appreciate it. You guys are great. Awesome. Like I said, as long as you give me just a millimeter of maybe that's something, I'll walk away with that. Both you gentlemen were awesome to talk to you. I appreciate it, man.
Yep.
Hey,
Hey,
thanks
well, I
for calling,
appreciate
buddy.
you calling in. I am glad that we got to debate a theist.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Hey, cheers,
guys.
man.
Have a good one.
Yep.
Later.
Exactly 1 hour. That was a full clip. Fantastic. Well, friends, we went over, but listen, we couldn't get a theist because they're like, where are they at? And then we finally got one. So we went over. And I think it was worth it. I think we had a good conversation. But we
Yeah.
do have to read super chats now. Every super chat $9.99 and over, we're going to be reading before we close out the live stream. Thank you so much for being here and for supporting the stream, friends. I'll grab the first one and then we'll alternate through.
Sure,
I
sounds
think the
good.
first one's from Pooh Bear. Maybe. There we go. Is it on screen? I don't see it. Uh-oh. It's broken. Dave broke it. Oh, there we go. 999 from Pooh Bear. Thank you so much. Says flippin' flapjacks while the homies play Smash Brothers. Call it the law of excluded griddle. Oof,
That's funny.
That's good.
That's really good.
That's pretty good.
Thanks so much for the $10 super chat from the Atheist Mechanic. Call me a prophet, but I'm predicting that there will be no convincing arguments by theists tonight, and at least one will drop a slur. I'll be awaiting the praise. Oops. Well, you got the first half right. You know, the one theist that we talked to the entire night, the argument was, there is no argument. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Just have faith anyways. And from David, thank you for the super chat, friend. Says Jesus is coming back on March 15th, 2069. Anything you say against it is blasphemy at 2:14 a.m. just to entrap the alcoholics.
Maybe the elite strategy is you give like a very like concrete prophecy for when the return is happening, but it's like after you're going to die. So then you get to live your life. You get to form the sex cult that you want to form, and then it's only revealed to be false afterwards.
That's what made Christianity successful, because all of Jesus' stuff was like, hey, I'm going to die and come back. So I'm not doing this stuff now, but I'm going to do it later.
Yeah, you get all the things that prophets typically want. But yeah, like a future date. That's why, that is why Jesus is so good at it, is because he doesn't set a date. Well, wait, except he does.
He did, and he
totally
failed.
Does. Yeah, that's awkward, but I guess it doesn't deter Christians.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Okay. Joshua Everett, thanks so much for the super chat. Imagine a being with existence relative to ours, as ours is to a hypothetical two-dimensional being. Wouldn't temporal restrictions only apply during the time that it directly acts within reality? Okay, it stands to So I think that there's like kind of something I'm not sure how to understand degrees of existence. I don't think that existence comes in degrees. I think existence is like a discrete thing. I think you either have it or you don't. But okay, let's say that I'm fine with that. I think it's fine to grant that God is outside of time. I just think that creates like huge problems from the things that follow from that. Like, for example, that means that God doesn't exist at any like temporal position. So if causation requires like temporal connection or like spatial connection, you're fucked. It also follows from that God is unchanging. So probably like also God doesn't know what time it is, because the time that it is changes. So his knowledge would need to change, but he can't change because he's outside of time. Like there are problems with it, but
yeah, for sure. I think we got another one coming. There we go. Hey, 10 from Narcissa. Good to see you, friend. Hope you're doing well. It says, if there's no caller, Ian, please sing a song. Ian could probably do Hot to Go.
HOTTOGO. You can take me hard to go. There you go. Yeah. Why would you do that?
Amazing.
Goat. Dr. Joe, executive, thanks so much for the super chat. It's my brain is processing so slow. It's just Dr. Joe. I'm stupid.
It's just Dr. Joe. It's our friend. Yeah.
It's just Dr. Joe. What the fuck am I doing? Do you need me to reconvert and call in so I can sacrifice myself for the sin of dad jokes? Yeah.
Oh no.
Gotta get some. I should have recruited like some like Philoso, some Discord Philoso LARPer.
This slander against dad jokes will not stand. 10 from Theo Games says the logical structure argument Ian mentioned is something that has seemed, I think he meant seemed appealing. It seems to preclude a true nothing state and lets logic point to something or have some real semantic content.
Yes. That's actually like an integral part of the argument. In fact, like the author of the argument that I was talking about earlier starts with basically this is like the argument for why there can't be a true nothing, because in order to have something that obtains or something that does not obtain, you have like competing states of affairs, that in order to have these competing states of affairs where one is not, there needs to be like a logical structural backdrop to it. So like a true nothing is impossible is what the author is arguing, because even in like a true nothing where things obtain as opposed to not obtaining, there would still be this like logical backdrop of obtaining as opposed to not obtaining. So it wouldn't be a true nothing because the structure still exists and underlies it.
And this one's yours, right?
Yeah. Sourdough, thanks so much for the super chat. Strongly recommend the book, not the TV series, Under the Banner of Heaven by John Krakauer. Follows the Mormon Trail and a current forgery scam. Footnotes are amazing. I'll have to check it out.
And 10 from Ray Gato, it says, I tried to walk like an Egyptian and now I need to see a chiropractor. Oh, man, amazing. 10 out of 10.
Waka. David, thanks so much for the super chat. Maybe God is the friends we made along the way. Yeah, true. Maybe God is that little glimmer in your eye.
And 10 from Joshua Everett. Good to see your friend. Says caller, there's a lot. I do mean a lot of writing and thought about the classical laws of logic. Study up on that and come back to us. There's unlikely to be anything new there to object to. Yeah, I mean, I haven't read all the writings, but my understanding is like there's a lot of ink dedicated to this topic.
Yeah, there's like a good amount. Especially like there's like a lot in like ancient times with people like Aristotle, who of course like lays out and tries to like formalize them and give like justifications for why the positions are like self-defeating. But then also in modern times too, with the formalization of logic, there's been a lot of work done recently. Simunertian, thanks so much for the super chat. To piggyback on this, if you want a funny semi-historical story, look up the story of the French jester Triboulet, the story of him mocking the king and queen and his execution method of choice. Rock hard for Doug. Is this the one where he asked for like the execution method of like something like fucking like being set free, or I don't know, something like that, and then he made the king chuckle, and then I think I've heard this story. I've been told this story in YouTube shorts.
I feel like we've all heard it at some point. $10 from Game Guy. Good to see you. It says, partaking of the devil's lettuce right before Ian's convo about thinking about thoughts that you're not thinking about wasn't the best move, but I'm still tracking better than the caller. True. That caller did not track.
Yeah, I mean, if the argument feels like if it feels like the argument is too simple, you've gotten it. Like it's like obvious. Like the argument is like obviously true. The Atheist Mechanic, thanks so much for the super chat. Every Philbro that comes on is exhausting. No substance to them at all. Seems they all argue with, but have you considered nah? Yeah, I think that there's this is true of every community. But like definitely there are people who hold like dogmatic beliefs in like the atheist community. There are people who have made up their mind about something and are unwilling to be convinced otherwise that they even like might be wrong about it. I think it's important to hold the beliefs that you hold for the right reasons. I hope nobody is like atheistic in like a dogmatic way and such that they wouldn't change their mind if they were presented with evidence or something like that. But yeah.
Hey, and we got $20 from Bill. Bill Shield. Thank you so much, friend. Says, this is to buy a Philbro timer. Please make this stuff. That's a reference to my stream, friends. For people who want to run syllogisms, I give them a timer. And if they can't prove the syllogism to be sound or valid within that time slot, we're done with that one. We're not going to drag it out. But Ian does not, because he loves philosophy, and he like just digs right into it and crushes it.
Yeah. I love syllogisms. Mike Jones, thanks so much for the super chat. I'm going to be so pissed if I tune into the next show and this gibberish is still going on fucking next. Yeah, I'm sorry. I wish we had like better callers so that we could have moved on quicker. It's difficult. I don't know. What are you going to do?
It's just one of those things, and we didn't have callers in the queue, so I was like, well, at least we're talking to somebody right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
And 10 from the Atheist Mechanic again. Thank you so much. This is for Justin, ending our misery from that call. Thank you. No problem, but I got your back.
David, thanks so much for the super chat. I came for Justin's deep biblical knowledge and was not disappointed.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Appreciate that. And 10 from Mira Featherbender says about injections in military basic training, even in 01 Air Force. Yup, it's an assembly line. They all hurt a lot, but the worst was the huge needle in the booty cheek was like thick syrup. Major pain.
Yeah,
that was a great movie too.
I've heard about that one. I think it's called like the marshmallow shot or something like that. But it's like this like thick fucking like white.
Ooh.
I think it's like some sort of like antibiotic maybe. I don't even know what it is, but it's everyone says that it's like agonizingly painful. And it's like super quick. They do it super quickly too. Dusk Frame, thanks so much for the super chat. I love cats very dearly. I'm also allergic to them. If God made me this way, then he's kind of a jerk. That's right. They don't go to heaven. You had one opportunity to enjoy them and you don't even get to. Fuck you.
True. Super cruel. Super. And 10 from the Atheist Mechanic again. Thank you. It says, remember, if you have evidence, then you don't need faith. Faith is auto-deceptive. To steal from Aaron Ra on that, it's just a good quote. True. Well, the funny thing about faith is like the people who proclaim to have faith, they haven't even read the Bible to figure out what faith means. They just think faith is just forcing yourself to believe something, whether it's true or not. But it's not really what it means in the Bible. It's weird that it's like all the theists. They haven't read their books.
Mountain Eucalyptics, thanks so much for the super chat. The hard part of watching the line is restraining my habit/impulse to defend all these things that I don't believe in anymore. 20 plus years of indoctrination doesn't vanish quickly. Thanks, people. Yeah, well, I think that that's like I think that there's like something good about that habit. I think that it's like a huge virtue to be able to like steelman the opposition. Whenever I'm talking about something like ethics with my friends, and I think that they make like I think that they give like a bad objection or something, I'll be like, oh no, I don't think that objection works. And I don't know, I think it's a good habit I think it's good if you're able to give like a good case for the side that you don't believe in.
True. Yeah. And 10 from Ontological Shock. Good to see you. Friend says, hey friends, sadly I didn't join the queue early enough, but I enjoyed the convos. Would love to talk about First Enoch sometime and share my hypothesis about some ghost sightings based in neuroscience. It certainly would be interesting, Ontological. I'm pretty familiar with First and Second Enoch. So next time we're on, or perhaps during a Q&A coming up, and we'll talk about it.
Space Barbarian, thanks so much for the super chat. Without Matt, I forgot the $10 limit. I think it's pretty miraculous that the New Testament lists 2 dads for Joseph. Happy Pride. Based.
That's awesome. By the way, there is an explanation for that in Eusebius's writings, but it's not a good one. You won't like it. I think that's the last super chat. Well, hey, friends, thank you so much for being here and hanging out with us late and enduring what might have been an 2.5 hours of non-theist callers. But perhaps next time we'll be able to get somebody with some gumption to call in and defend their God. Ian, I had a blast, nonetheless, having on the stream. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love our banter. It was a great conversation. I don't know. I thought it was a great time. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, friends, have a great night. Remember, we are also going to be doing shows throughout the week. So tune in to the shows on Thursday, on Saturday, and on Sunday. I think now we might have a Cus I Wanted listed on Friday. It's not listed yet, but make sure you're tuning in the next